Hello everybody, welcome into our latest live broadcast. Today it is Friday, February the 7th, 2025. I'm laughing because I have to look at the clock to see the date. The Super Bowl Sunday, the big football game, is this Sunday here in the United States. You guys ready for the big game? Kansas City gonna win it for a third time in a row? Probably. But hey, hopefully we'll have some good commercials and hopefully a close game. And it's about the only sport I'll watch, and I get more interested once it whittles down to the last, 4 or 8 teams, then I'm a little more interested. But in any event, welcome in. Happy Friday to everybody. Got a little bit of a late start today, but the good news is I finally figured out which build I was doing. It's a secret build because I didn't even know what it was until, well, a few hours ago. So what we're going to do today is something I completely forgot about that's been sitting here waiting for my attention. Now this might look like a regular, ordinary, everyday tower case. Oh, no, it is not. This case right here comes with a power supply and a 360-degree liquid cooler already installed. Did I say 360-degree? 360 millimeter liquid cooler. So we have like a $100 power supply, we have a $150 cooler, we have a $150 case, RGB fan in the back, RGB fans on the front in front of the radiator. Does anybody want to guess how much a case like this costs? Or how much you would spend to replace or to buy just the case, just the cooler, and just the power supply? We're going to get into that in a minute. This was well out of my budget, but I saw one was returned to Amazon for a significant discount, about a third off. And I thought, what the heck, it's coming from Amazon. If there's anything wrong with it, I'll just send it back. It's free to return items. And it looks brand new, like even the packaging on the inside, that's the water block for the cooler right there all wrapped up. Clearly nobody opened it. So I think this is a brand new case. Somebody ordered it, had buyer's remorse for one reason or another. And so to our advantage, we were able to pick it up. It's an interesting color. It's almost like a gunmetal gray with a black. And this is called the TD500 MAX. And I thought this would be a great case for our Ultra 7 build. See, I knew I wanted to do something with the Phantom Gaming Nova Z890 from ASRock. I feel like, well, it's not an Ultra 9. It's a pretty neat looking special board with a decent amount of power, like really. I wouldn't say it's a slouch by any stretch of the imagination. Ultra 7 is still really fast and a lot cheaper than the Ultra 9. In fact, I'd say the Ultra 9 is a bit of a ripoff compared to the price of the Ultra 7, and the difference between them, the money doesn't add up. So the smart buyer, I think, sticks with the Ultra 7. Now, we had put a cooler on the Ultra 7 to test it from our friends over at ASRock, and unfortunately that cooler is not going to work for us. So I was in the process of trying to figure out what cooler do I want to put on this Ultra 7. And because I really want to show it off, we're going to get a glass case with RGB, so we probably want to use a liquid cooler. And this just answered all of my problems because the cooler's already there. The power supply is already there, although power supply is not the struggle. Getting a cooler, preferably that fits in the front of the case, is important to me. When I put coolers up on the top, you cannot really see the RGB unless you look up under it. And further, as you can see, I like to stack things on top of a computer case. It's just something I've done for years. If you've got a radiator up here, you're blocking the air vents, whether you're pulling air in or blowing air out, exhausting it. Your computer's going to overheat if you put a bunch of stuff on top of it. And I'm going to put stuff on top of it. Let's face it, I'm not going to all of a sudden remember, oh, with this one computer out of the 20 I have, I can't put stuff on top of this one. If that's the case, just stick with an air cooler and to heck with the looks. So this is the perfect solution for me, and a lot of the work is already done. So I'm excited. There's more to this case than just the included radiator and power supply. They also have some added features inside that we're going to look at. Okay, making sure that was glass. The CoolerMaster is the manufacturer. They made another case that had an enclosed custom power supply and cooler. And if you remember, the Core, what was it called? The N-Core 100, I think is what it was called. It was a bronze skinny tower. We also bought that as a returned item, and it was perfect. Again, it looked like something that had never been used. And on average, and I don't know what your guesses were, but a case that includes a power supply and a cooler is going to be about $400. That's reasonable considering if you were to buy those components separately, you'd be spending about $400 for equivalent wattage and size of radiator. Furthermore, you know, you've got the case itself. And if I show you the Amazon page for this, which is right here, you'll see it's $399.99. And as I mentioned, some of the work is done for us. It's supposed to be real easy to cable manage. And I think this was the case I was trying to think of the other day, where the motherboard, the power connector to the motherboard just plugs into the side of the case, and then it's like a little adapter that connects to the back, I think. I don't know. I'm going to be figuring this out as we go. I could have watched some videos on this to better prepare myself, but I don't want to be prepared. I want to be surprised, and I want to, you know, figure out what's different on my own without having somebody, you know, give me all the spoilers. And I thought we'd go through that together. But this was returned. I don't know if they have any other returned ones. Yeah, see, here's one that says used, very good condition, shipping from Amazon, $262, so $137 off. That's a significant discount. And I would certainly give that a shot, knowing that with my Amazon account, I can return it for free up to 30 days after purchase at no cost. So yeah, it might be a hassle to put it all back in the box, but nonetheless, for that kind of money, I've seen returned items that are $10 off. I'm not buying a $400 item because they took $10 off on it because it's returned. It's not worth the risk for 10 bucks, but for 130, yeah, that's a significant savings, $137. So just something to keep in mind when you're shopping on Amazon. Look for those returned items. If it's not a consumable item like a solid state drive or a battery, those things I would not buy used because we just don't know how much life is left in them. But a case, a power supply, a cooler, that's all good stuff. And I'm looking forward to basically what we're going to do today, which is take the ASRock cooler, which did not work for us. It's just inadequate and too loud. We're going to take that off of the Ultra 7, which we did a video on when we were reviewing that cooler. And we're going to put that motherboard in here, attach the water block, hook up the power connectors. That's pretty much it. Now, of course, we can also add a graphics card to it if we want to spend the extra money. I don't have any interest in doing that. Our onboard graphics are more than enough for all but the gamers, and I just don't have the money or the time. I wish I did, to just sit around and play games all day. I really do wish I did. I'm not opposed to games. I just simply cannot afford them, and I cannot afford the time to sit down and just play games. I'm my only employee. So if I'm not working, the last thing I want to do is work some more with computers. I want to just maybe watch some YouTube videos, go have dinner, cook dinner, do anything other than with a computer. And then the next day I start again. And I'm pretty much about that 7 days a week. And if I'm not doing that, then there's work here around Studio C that has to be done, electrical work, fixture work, plumbing work. Like that's just a sea of it, more than I will do certainly in the next 2 years. But I just take little bites out of it. And sometimes I injure myself a little bit when I'm doing it because it's not the normal work I do. And then I have to give my hands time to heal from the electrical work and things. So I need a few days off to kind of heal up so I could go back at it again. So it's either that or hiring somebody to do it. And somewhere in there, there's a balance because I can't do it all. And there are some very talented people we know that can do this kind of work if we can afford to pay them. So with all of that going on and all of those priorities, I would rather sink money into Studio B to get it updated and fixed up than into a gaming computer that could be the price of a bathroom rebuild, right? That's only going to last, let's say, 6 to 10 years before it's just inadequate for playing modern games. Whereas the bathroom, if it's built right, would last for 20 years, right, without needing any further upgrades. So I'm trying to think about how I'm investing the money. It's not like I got a big pile of money and I can just spread it around and everybody can have some. Maybe someday. So I'm just trying to figure out the budget to be able to do the things I want to do or need to do. But at the same time, if I'm sitting around playing games, I'm spending money that could be better spent on more important things, and I'm spending time on things that could be spent on more important things. For that reason, I'm not going to drop a $2,000 graphics card in this. We're going to use the built-in graphics. And with that power supply and the way this case is set up, if somebody buys this computer that wants to put a graphics card in it, they can spend that extra money, which will be pretty much the cost of this computer doubled for a good graphics card. They can deal with that. But nothing about this computer will prevent them from doing it. It's just their wallet and their time. So for that reason, you know, if I had graphics cards in every one of the systems we built here, we'd have over $40,000 in graphics cards. Or a new Tesla Model 3 with change left over. So it's not practical to build computers at this scale that other people aren't ordering for me and paying for. So for that reason, you're going to see a lot of us using built-in graphics. Also, I prefer built-in graphics, as do all of my clients. It's easier. There's fewer driver updates to deal with, and customers can't tell the difference. We're still powering 3 and 4 monitors off of the built-in graphics on these machines. They open all the applications my customers use. They cannot tell a difference other than the price tag. So it's just for the gamers who then not only want to spend the money for the extra graphics card, spend the extra time on the extra maintenance, and then also spend the extra money for the games, and also have the time to do all that. So it's for those reasons we don't do it here, but you certainly could do it at home. Nothing about this machine would prevent you from gaming on it, other than the game requiring a more advanced graphics card. But it's ready to go. Well, we're going to talk about the details of the power supply and some layout of the case here in just a moment. But first, I want to say hello, everybody. Happy Friday to everyone. And let's see, who do we have in our chat room? Well, we got a bunch of super chats today. That is awesome. Let me say a shout out and thank you to Mark Gaines, who gave us a $20 super chat contribution. He says hello to Carey. That's me. Mara. She's our channel administrator, working tirelessly in the background. And everyone in chat, all of our friends and members in this community. Thank you, Mark. Ben Laird contributes £5. He says hello from Scotland. Welcome in, Ben. Good to see you. Our friend Rick Lakes with a $5 super chat joins us from Minnesota. There's Buster joining us from Scotland. Buster's a good friend and supporter of the channel. And £10 super chat from Buster. He says hello, Carey and Mara and everyone in the chat. All the best from Bonnie, Scotland. The temperature in Edinburgh right now, 38 degrees Fahrenheit or 3.3 degrees Celsius. Ooh, that sounds cold. Our friend Charlie Purdy says hello with a $10 super chat. He says, hey, Carey, Mara, and everyone in chat. Welcome in, Charlie. Good to see you. Douglas Burchell renews his membership. Douglas has been a member now 19 months. He says, happy Friday to everyone in the chat. Good to see you all. Thanks, Douglas. Davis Parsons with a $10 super chat said, my latest build is that same case, and it is a great case. All right, that's not a spoiler. I'm glad somebody's familiar with it and that you have a good experience with it. I'm looking forward to this build today because I think it's a very unique case. I think it's going to save me some work, and I think it's going to look great and be appropriate for this build. Our friend Alan Lindos joins us in the chat with a $7.77 super chat. He says, sorry for the late fee again. I'm trying to get better. Planet Cryos with a $2 super chat says, hey, dude, it's me. Good to see you. Welcome in, Planet Cryos, and thank you for the super chat. Be sure and check out Planet Cryos' YouTube channel. He's been posting content very regularly, and I think if you like my videos, I think you're going to like his as well. So after this video, maybe jump over and check his out, subscribe, give him a like. It's just part of this amazing community we have, and if you haven't, you're the one missing out because he's got some good stuff. Ron Barnish renews membership, now a member for 30 months. Right on. Thank you, Ron. Robert Kachna with a €5 super chat says, hello, Carey. Here's for the Gatorade. I love your live stream. Thank you, Robert. Planet Crass with another $2 super chat says, I can be super chatty, so here is a super chat. Okay, that's allowed. Thank you again, Planet Cryos. Samuel Kowalski with a $1 super chat. Thank you, Samuel. Thanks to all of you. And of course, a special shout out to our friend Buster out there for his extraordinary support. Now, for everybody else in our chat room, if you're white or green or blue, thank you for being here. Thank you for joining me, especially for our members that help support us. And of course, you know, just for hanging out and being interactive as part of this amazing community, which is made possible by the community. It's a catch-22 there. Without the community, we wouldn't have this community. And with this community, we hope it attracts other like-minded individuals that want to be around kind and supportive people and want to be kind and supportive in return. If so, please join us during our live videos, because this is not TV. This is not meant, my videos are not meant for you to just sit on the couch and passively watch. We want you to interact with us and each other while we are live. If you are watching this video after it airs live and you're saying, I don't get it, I don't know why people like this, that's because you weren't participating. This is a participatory video. This is not a passive video. If you try to watch it passively, well, it's almost like you're being left out of something. And it can feel like personal. But I can assure you, as long as you're nice, come on into our chat room. Join us during the live. All you have to do is say hello. It doesn't matter if you feel socially awkward or you don't normally participate. Well, I don't normally experience joy. Come on in here and give it a shot. We'd love to have you. All right, so I've got the motherboard sitting right over here. We've got to remove the cooler off of it. But first, I just want to take a look at this case because I was really impressed with the, I think it was called the Encore 100. Let me see if I can pull that up here on Amazon. Just to refresh your memory, Encore 100 MAX, I think is what they called it. Same company from CoolerMaster, but it's a mini ITX build. And I believe this was also $400 when it first came out. And again, we were able to buy another used one. So it looks like the price has come down. It's now $355. There's no RGB on this. It's just a, it almost looks like a Bluetooth speaker. Little power button and stuff down there on the bottom. And if you missed that build video, we can be sure and add it to the links below this video. If it's at a members only status, we'll turn it back to public so everybody can go back and rewatch that again. It is one of my favorite builds because the liquid cooler, the radiator, the hoses, and the power supply all have custom cut cables so that you know, it knows where certain things are going to be. It knows where the motherboard power connector is going to be. It knows how far the CPU pump has to go. So that way you don't have all the excess cable. That makes the cable management much easier than if you were to attempt to build something like this on your own, which you can do for a lot more money. There is an ASA case that's very similar in design. There's a few cases similar in design. And as far as I can tell, they're all a pain in the butt to work on. But this one was super easy to work on and a real pleasure. I really enjoyed it. You'll see it includes an 850 watt small form factor or small SFX ATX power supply 3.0. And we showcase this in a build video. Now this computer resides over at Studio A. It's just kind of sitting for now until we figure out what to do with it. The problem that I have is I have these amazing machines, but nobody locally that wants to buy them, or they want to give me pennies on the dollar. So for pennies on the dollar, I just keep them and we figure maybe something will come up where we need it. So that computer was moved out of Studio B over to Studio A because we didn't have any room in Studio C other than what we needed. And since we didn't need this anymore, but we still, we were kind of stuck with it. I love this machine. I love it. I just think it was a pleasure to work on. My only concern is what happens when that liquid radiator or that liquid cooler fails. It's a custom cooler. It's a custom size radiator. Where are you going to get a replacement? That part I don't know. So hopefully we won't deal with that. But we may have something similar going on here. Maybe not. I'm not sure. But with this new case, I don't know how proprietary the radiator is. But I suppose you could always put a 360 millimeter radiator in a 360 millimeter slot, if you will. It just may not be as good as the one the case comes with. This radiator, I think, is much thicker than a standard all-in-one you would buy. And I do believe that was the same with this Encore 100, was the radiator was like 1.5 inches thick. It was some ridiculously thick radiator. And that really, really makes a big difference in cooling. So even if you were to replace that radiator with a generic one, it would probably fit okay, but it'd be half the thickness. It wouldn't cool as well. Could that be a problem? Depends on which CPU you're using. So that's my hesitation with these. The power supply is fine, even if the power supply went out, even though the custom cut cables reduce cable management, you could still put any SFX power supply in it and just deal with the excess cables, right? The excess length of the cables. And if we scroll down, do they have any used or return ones? See here, for $344.41, that's only a $10 discount off of the price now. There's no point in saving $10 and taking that risk. Not for 10 bucks. I just buy it new. But it was selling at $399.99, so I don't know if this is a sale price or if this is now the new price since the product's not brand new anymore. They might have lowered the price in order to increase interest in people to encourage them to buy it. And I think they have it in 2 different colors. I think we've got, let's see. For some reason, this one's even cheaper because it's not the bronze color. This is more of a grayish silver. Other than that, it's the same so far as I can tell. So you're paying a $100 premium for that color. So $269.59 is a great price. I mean, that's crazy good. Given you are getting that 850 watt power supply, you are getting that 140, I think, or 120 millimeter radiator, but it's a really thick radiator. And do they have any of those used? 242 used, that's only a $25 savings. I don't think I would buy it used for 25 bucks. Not to save 25 bucks. That'd have to be at least 20% off. So 10% off is not worth it to me. I just buy a new one. The NR200P, which is in this list, is something entirely different, and I don't know why it's in there, other than these are all mini ITX builds. So mini ITX can be very difficult to work with because of how confined the cases are. But that was not the situation here. Both panels come off. This was one of the easier mini ITX builds I've ever done. I think the Tower 100 is the easiest one I've ever done, but it's also the single largest mini ITX case. I might even be able to fit a micro ATX motherboard in that Tower 100, which is insane that it's that big. On the other hand, it does make it super easy to work on. But with this one, the panels on both sides come off. It just opens up and everything goes in vertically. And that was super easy. I would say the Tower 100 was a little easier, but at the end of the day, this is the one I'd rather have, even though it's not as attractive, in my opinion, as the Tower 100. It's more practical because the Tower 100 requires you to remove the lid to get into the I/O panel of the motherboard. And this I/O panel, or the motherboard I/O panel on this case, is fully exposed on the back. So you don't have to remove any panels to access wiring or USB ports. Some people say, well, I don't access wires or USB ports regularly. That wouldn't bother me. It bothers me. So if it doesn't bother you, buy it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't care. I'm just letting you know. Be aware of it so you're not surprised like I am. Because had I known the restriction to the I/O ports was going to require me to remove the lid of the computer, I probably wouldn't have bought it, other than, I don't know, I guess it's great channel content, but for as frequently as I have to hook things up and take things out, USB drives, and change monitors and things. And as I mentioned, I like to stack things on top of the computer. If I have to take the top of the computer off, and it just pulls off, it snaps out. If I have to do that over and over and over again, just to plug in a simple cable or a network cable, forget about it. I'm done. It's not worth it to me. So this one in that way was superior. The I/O shield is in the back. It's fully exposed, so there's none of that nonsense. Just like any other ordinary computer, you just reach around back and plug in what you want. So pros and cons. Tower 100 is also a lot cheaper and in many ways looks a lot better. So it's an individual decision, and I have my opinion, you have yours. You spend your money however you want. They're both great cases. I just have some personal preferences on that Encore 100. And it was such a good experience that when I heard about this one, I was like, why didn't I hear about this sooner? I had deja vu. Power supply is included, liquid coolers already installed. That's all less work and less money I have to spend to coordinate what's going to fit and give us enough power. It's already done for you. And then I was like, well, $400, I don't want to spend that. But is there a returned one? Yeah, for like $250. Okay, it's coming from Amazon. As long as it's coming from Amazon warehouse, I know I can return it if there's anything wrong with it. And this thing looks brand new. So that's how we got here. And thanks to your Amazon gift cards and your super chats and contributions and your memberships, we're able to buy it. Corsair has never sent us anything. I don't even think they know I exist. So because we can buy things ourselves, we can then review them however we want. We're free to speak our mind without any worry of upsetting a company or getting their permission or following whatever schedule they need for the video to be released. In most cases, if a company is paying you, they need to see the video before you release it, and you need to agree to make any changes before you publish it so the public can see it. And you have to do that by a certain date or you don't get paid. I don't want to do that for a living. That's what all of your big tech content creators do. They pretty much all do it, and they almost have to pay the bills. But with our community here, we don't have to do that. And I hope it stays that way, because I might have to look for a career change before I start just getting paid by random corporations to read their scripts. That's just not me. That's not to say I wouldn't work with a company I like, but I wouldn't just take any company and, take their money and make their commercial. It's not what I want to do. I don't want to make commercials for a living. I'm a tech, and I want to show you what I look for when I'm building parts and when I'm recommending parts to customers, where I'm not trying to go too cheap. I'm not trying to go too expensive. I'm trying to meet the customer's needs. And that customer could be a home user. Typically, for me, the home users I'm working with are either retired or they run a home-based business. And those are going to be two very different computers. Or the bulk of my income comes in from businesses, small to medium businesses, dentist's office, doctor's office, lawyers, accountants, real estate agents, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's where the money is in this business in IT. If you want to get into IT, don't be thinking about working for people in the resident. Obviously, it's people, but not for people at home. Those people want to pay the least. Have you come to them? And some of these homes are pretty nasty. There's liability concerns. They can make accusations that you did things you didn't do while you were in their home. There have been actual instances where techs working for like Geek Squad have left their cell phone in a bathroom with a video recorder on. Oops. So you'll run into issues that you typically don't have with businesses, including the frequency of work. From going to a home user, you might see that home user every 18 to 24 months, and that's not going to keep you in business. You would need a lot of home users. If you average if you figure out what your average bill would be, what your average consumer is going to pay, and how frequently an average consumer is going to call you. So if it's once every 2 years or once every 18 months, and you know how much money you need to pay the bills, plus you'd probably like a little extra, you get an idea of how many of those residential customers you need. And then, of course, if there's gas and time in the car, there's only so many hours in the day. If you're self-employed and you don't have any employees, You'd be much better off working for a business that's going to call you more often, and they're going to have a lot more than just one computer that needs to be serviced or maintained, plus backups. There may be phones they want you to maintain, security systems. They may need computers themselves, and maybe they buy the computers from you. So as you can see, you could work a lot smarter working for business that's going to give you a lot more work. And instead of going to 10 different locations to work on 10 different computers, you could be in one building and walk 10 feet to work on 10 different computers. So these are all things to consider when you're in this line of work versus if you're just making YouTube videos. And I'm trying to combine the two. That's my point if you're new here. We're trying to give you a fly on the walls view of what goes through the mind of a tech that's held accountable and liable to the services and quality of the products they sell, while still maintaining a profit and keeping a customer happy. How do you do that? And then, of course, there are businesses bigger than mine where the person in my position just delegates the work. You hire employees, you get the work, and then you send the employees to do the job. But if you don't have any jobs for those employees, you're still paying for those employees. And I'd say the toughest part of running the business is getting the work. It's not doing the work. I'm fine with doing the work. It's being able to market yourself, to sell yourself, to be bold enough to knock on doors, to say, hi, my name is Carey. I'm a computer technician. I work in the area. Are you guys happy with your IT tech? Do you have one? Let me just leave a card with you. And if there's anything I can do for your company, please give me a call anytime. I'm in the neighborhood anyway. I service other computers in this area, so I've been in business 34 years. I'd love to help you. Even if you don't need me today, please hold on to my card and call me anytime. My number hasn't changed in all those years. Likely won't. I'll be around. Thank you for your time. Have a nice day. You go to the next business, and you go to the next business. You go to these industrial parks where there's just business after business. Doesn't even matter what the business does. They always have computers. Could be an automotive shop, and maybe they only have 5 computers. It could be an architectural firm, and they have 10, 20 computers, and they're pretty expensive ones to do that kind of work. You could be dealing with hydrology companies. I mean, when you go in these industrial parks, there's all kinds of businesses, a variety of businesses. And you may not get one sale. You may hit 30, 40 businesses in that industrial park and have everybody say, we're good, we're happy with who we have, we don't need anything. Hey, that's great. I understand. I'm happy for you. Glad to hear that. If anything changes, just put my card away somewhere. I'd be happy to meet and have an assessment of what you've got and see how I can help you and save you money. That's it. No high pressure sales. But somebody's got to do that. If you've got employees you need to send to jobs, you need to get the jobs from somewhere. And if you're doing that, then you don't have time to do both. And if you don't do that, then you don't have the money to hire employees. So someone we used to talk to a bit more frequently about this particular process, there's a couple of folks. One is Tim Taylor with, I'm trying to think of his computer company. He's in Florida, and he expanded his computer company. He had many employees, and he started out of the trunk of his car. There's also technibble.com. That's Bryce Whitty's website, which is intended to help computer IT, self-employed people that run their own businesses, give them ideas for marketing techniques and services you can sell, and it has a community and forum of other business owners sharing their ideas, their frustrations, or their trying to solve a problem. Sometimes there's a moral dilemma. Should I do this? Should I not? How would you handle it? And it's great to talk with other IT business owners of various sizes and in different countries who will share their perspective. Here's what I would do to solve this. It's great to hear it from somebody in the same career versus, somebody who has no clue what it's like to do this kind of work. And honestly, regardless of what kind of business you decide to start. The hard part is always getting the customer. If you're a master chef and you make the best meals and you decide you're going to start your own restaurant and you do everything yourself, you design the restaurant, you set the tables, you pick the dinnerware, you pick the stemware, you pick the silverware, the carpet, the ambiance, the paint color. You have all the best pans and pots and ovens and stoves. You buy only the most quality ingredients, and your prices are the best in town. You have the best food, the best prices. You are independent and on your own, free to create whatever you want on your menu. The problem is nobody knows where your restaurant is or that it exists. You're not doing anything wrong. You perhaps got a great building and a great atmosphere and a great menu and great prices. And the food is amazing. And nobody even knows you exist. And it doesn't matter what your business is. That is universally true among all businesses, is you have to figure out a way to let people know, hey, I'm over here, give me a shot, right? If you're a real estate agent, if you're an accountant, if you do taxes, the first chore that you have, no matter what your personal skill is for the business, whatever the business's service is going to provide, is finding your customers. And when I have that figured out, I'll let you know. Thankfully, by having small businesses as my client primarily, as my main source of business, keeps me from getting overworked, being overburdened by too much work, needing to hire anybody. So, but it also provides me with a regular income, and I'm working with familiar computers, many of which I built myself, and it makes it a lot less stressful to not worry about how I'm going to make money next month. Customers are going to require regular maintenance, updates, backups, etc. And as long as we keep everything updated and maintained, it doesn't 100% remove emergencies from happening, but it certainly reduces it significantly. And that makes my job so much more enjoyable if I can take the pressure off. Pressure is fine, but too much pressure all the time will break you. I don't care how good your stamina is with how much you can withstand. You will break. And when you break, it could take your whole business out. So there's a balance there too, where you can get too much work. And the problem with too much work is, unless you know that work is going to keep coming in, it doesn't make sense to hire somebody, have them do the work, and then that work goes away, and then it's back to just enough for you. And then you got to let that person go. So also, that person could be talking behind your back to your customer going, I don't know what he's charging you, but I'll charge you less if you just hire me directly. And then those two go off, and you just lost the customer and the employee. So these are some of the challenges you don't typically hear about on a YouTube tech channel, because most of them don't run businesses. They just like building computers. That's fine for what it is, but it can be so much more, and you can earn a living from it, which for me, honestly, I don't know what I would have done with my life if I didn't find this. So I am very grateful to have my career, and I am very happy to share what I've learned throughout running a business and being a computer repair tech, doing the marketing. There's so many angles to it. And then there's the whole YouTube side of things, which is another business with cameras and technical setups that have nothing to do with computers. Bit rates, audio filters and microphones and CMOS sensors and lighting and tripods, and oh my gosh, they're all different careers. And I do my best to be just first, the best tech that I can possibly be. That's my primary focus. And then trying to run my business as good as I can, as fairly, as ethically, and as morally. Trying to have a YouTube channel that's not over the top like some Twitch channel, gaming channel with all kinds of bells and whistles and flyers and, you know, game show. I'm not into that. But at the same time, good quality video, good quality audio, and I'm always struggling to try and improve it a little bit more, and just keep growing on every aspect, growing on the marketing side, growing on my technical ability, growing on my ability to make these videos, and you know, keep growing, keep moving forward, and keep challenging myself, and ideally with as little pressure as possible. All right, so that'll give you an idea of daily life from my perspective. And it can be the best thing you ever did with your life if you have the right personality for it. And otherwise, if you want to watch vicariously, sit back and enjoy, and I'll share my struggles and my accomplishments with you. Let's see what's going on here in the chat room. NCG with a $5 Canadian contribution says, I am a former IT field service technician. The industry is high pressure and a low flat rate pay, corporate and home. Homes were dirty, filthy, and cramped. Unfortunately, you know, look, I've seen it all. I've been to homes that were mansions. You walk in and the ceiling is 50 feet up. There are Roman columns. Holy cow. I've also been to a lot of homes where there's dog feces that they just couldn't be bothered to pick up. And it's just nasty, gross, smelly, disgusting. And, you know, people have their choice to live any way they want to, but I don't want to be there. So that is something I stopped doing because it got to a point where those were the people who were putting the most pressure on me, expecting the most and paying the least. So that was the first thing I cut out of my business. These days, I still will work for residential clients, especially ones I've worked for before. But taking on new ones, I'm very particular because, quite frankly, there's not enough money in it. I'm going to hear from them once. I probably won't hear from them again for 18 months. So it's not a big loss by saying no thank you. But sometimes if it seems like the person I'm talking to is very reasonable and the situation is something I feel confident I can help them with without too much time, and I feel like they're not going to keep calling me for free support for the next 2 years, you know, because that puts me in an awkward place. I don't want to be that guy, but on the other hand, I don't want to be walked on. So I kind of have to feel that out on the phone call. But these days, those calls don't come in too much anyway, so that's not a big problem. And again, the focus is still on businesses, small to medium-sized businesses. The big corporations, you might as well not be self-employed. You might as well just go work for them because they're going to keep you busy and they're going to tell you how to do your job. And there's a lot of bureaucracy in those big corporations and government work that, again, I did that too. And what's right for me is the small and medium-sized businesses. But what's right for you is up to you to decide. That's the beauty of being in control of your own destiny and having that freedom of choice, which many of us don't have when working for somebody else. On the other hand, you don't have all those pressures of how much you're going to get paid or when you're going to get paid, or health insurance and vacation. All of that's built in usually when you're working for somebody else. So for some people, they prefer to work for somebody else. And for people like me, I would rather sacrifice all that for the independence and freedom. Joshua Mattingly with a $10 super chat says, I'm late to the live stream, but keep up the good work, Carey. Thank you, Joshua. John wants to know, in the chat room, if Mara and I thought about switching jobs for a week or a month, not trying to start trouble. We've certainly seen this happen with other YouTube channels where they try to grow with other hosts or co-hosts, and it's never ended well. Unfortunately, it's not like selling a widget or a gadget. What you're selling is your personality. People like you, they don't like you. The minute, and the content of what I'm doing is second to me. You could watch, let me put it to you this way. I am far from the first person to build in this case. I only just learned of it that it even existed. Again, you can have a great product, but how do you let people know it exists? Speaking of that, just to go off on a slight but related tangent. I was in the car the other day and I heard this song on the radio that it had almost a retro sound. It was fantastic. I was like, wow, it's pretty rare I hear a song and the first time I hear it I think, this is amazing. I Shazammed it with my phone. I see the name of the title. I never heard of the band. I never heard of the song. It must be new. I add it to my Spotify and I forget about it. A couple days later, I'm driving in the car. I hit Spotify and this song comes on. I'm like, oh yeah. I was going to look up who this band is and when the song came out. So when I get home, I look it up on YouTube and this song video was posted 15 years ago. What? It's got like 15 million views or something. That's pretty popular. How have I never heard this song in my life? 15 years. Let me learn more about the band, because I see comments saying, you know, rest in peace to like a couple of the band members. I'm Wikipediaing this band. It says this band formed in 1990, had this hit song in 1991, came out with another album in 1994, and were completely broken up before 1995, and have a couple of the band members have since passed on. So here's a great song from a great band, and in, what is it, 2025, from 1991, 34 years, pretty much when I started my career, this song was popular. I've never heard it in my life. So even as a band, right, they still have the same problem. How do we get people to hear our music? How do we get people to know that we exist? The band is called, you probably want to know the band. The name of the song is called 3 Strange Days. I feel like, am I the only person on earth that went 34 years without hearing this song? And the band is called School of Fish. School of Fish, 3 Strange Days. I thought it was the band Muse. When I heard it, I said, is that Muse? Does Muse have a new song out? I tend to like independent alternative rock and roll. So the voice was just a little bit different, but very similar to Muse. Anyway, my point is, I didn't know this case existed. If I had, I would have reviewed it earlier. If anybody was interested in this case, there are lots of other videos you could watch. And the reason why most people watch YouTube channels, specific, YouTube channels they're subscribed to, is for the creator, the person that's behind the camera. When you change the person who's behind the camera, the channel can struggle. This has happened in Donut Media. This has happened with Food Theory, Game Theory, Style Theory, right? They ended up selling the company and other hosts took over. And then they don't quite have the moof, the moof, that's not the word. They don't have the mojo and the energy or the style of the original creator that made it so popular. Can you imagine me hosting Hot Ones instead of Sean Evans? I would suck at that job. It would be terrible. So we certainly enjoy having Mara join us from time to time and Mitch joining us. I think it adds a little spice and flavor to the show. But I think if we switched it out for a while, and it's just the way that YouTube works, I think that the videos would, the numbers would go down, because people would say, well, that's not Carey. If I was in there. And one good example of this, there's a channel, and they haven't been around for a while, Tech Deals. And Tech Deals started hiring hosts to expand outwards. And the host did a great job. Wonderful people. But the audience wasn't embracing them. And the audience made it clear, we come here to see you. We didn't come here for the content. We came here to see you and your unique perspective on the content. And it's a terrible place to be, that you have to let somebody go because you can't afford to pay them. They're costing you money, and they've not done anything wrong, and they're perfectly nice, capable, well-spoken. They just haven't built up that loyalty. So, but you'll definitely see Mara on video again. And of course, Mitch will come back. We're going to do a build together for his birthday. And we have lots of other guests we're going to bring on. I think Brian Cometa from $300 Data Recovery is due for a return to talk about the current state of the data recovery business. Are people backing up yet, or is he busier than ever? Do you want to take a guess? What are the current trends he's seeing? There's a few other people in industry we'd like to talk to as well, just to keep things mixed up when it's not just me doing the same thing over and over again. But one common denominator among those shows is I should be in them. That's it. I'm not opposed to the idea, don't misunderstand. But I don't want to shoot myself in the foot and upset viewers either. So there is it's a high wire action. Fair question, though. I certainly wouldn't mind trading, or I wouldn't mind being in the background and let somebody else be in front of the camera. I'm just not quite sure most of my viewers will agree, but could be an expensive lesson. Nick Gaffrey with a €5 super chat says, "Hello, Carey and Mara, and here's my very late fee." Thank you, Nick. Andy Kane says the businesses I'm talking about, small and medium, we call them and oftentimes SMB, small medium business, or they're called SOHO, could be small office, home office. And here Andy says they call them SMEs, or small and medium enterprise. Yeah, for me, enterprise means like 50 or 100 minimum employees, and then up from there. That to me is enterprise, where you've got proper server rooms and full-time server staff, IT staff. For me, a small or medium business would not have a full-time IT staff. Just a managed service provider is all they need. And a customer, just a regular home user, would not need a managed service provider. They would only call you reactively when they have a problem. Every once in a while, I'll have a customer, a home user, reach out and say, it's been a while since you've done any maintenance on my computer, and I don't have any complaints, and I know it's supposed to be done, and I don't know how to do it. It's probably overdue, but do you think you could connect remotely and just do whatever it is you do to tune the computer up, because it's been a while? I love those calls. I love them because it tells me they care about their computer. They don't want to be reactive. They want to make sure all the updates and drivers and stuff are updated, make sure that the antivirus is working and there's nothing lingering in the background, that resources aren't being consumed with background programs they don't use, and make sure the health of everything is still passing and looking good. We have enough free space on the drive to make sure that the computer's optimally performing. And I can do all of that remotely, removing the temp files. I just can't blow the dust and dirt out of it. And I'll remind the customer, you should take the side panel off, take the thing outside, and hit it with an air duster, leaf blower, something to get the air out of it, the dust out of it. And it's easy money to make because it's very low stress, and I don't have to go anywhere. I can do it all remotely. And that customer, because they did that, likely won't be calling me with a problem or a failure anytime soon. Because if I see something starting to go, if I see something's not right, we can catch it before the customer is aware that it's impeding what they're trying to do. Then they call me in a panic, and then the pressure comes in. And when the pressure comes in, it becomes much more serious, and the price goes up, and it takes a lot more time usually. So try to avoid that. I think everybody's happier. Customers happier. They're not as inconvenienced. It doesn't cost them as much. I'm happier because I can help more people. I can get through several tune-ups in the same time it takes me to fix one or two machines. I had an issue last night. Customer was ready for Windows 11, and they have Windows 10 now. It's a machine I built back in 2021. It's a Gigabyte H370 HD3. That was the 8-year build. This customer has about 8 of them in their office, and they did not want Windows 11. And I said, okay, look, we're in 2025 now. I think the main person that everybody goes to for help for computer problems before they call me, the administrator of the office, should be the only one with Windows 11 if you're ready for it. And then if everything's fine, all your software works, all your printers work, and you're ready to answer questions, like you're comfortable enough using Windows 11 that if another employee says, hey, where did this icon go? Where did that setting go? They can ask you, since you're right there in the office with them, which they would do anyway, and you'll know the answer. So what I'm looking for is someone in the office who's typically the go-to person for the easy stuff. Hey, the printer won't print. Let's call Carey. No, hold on. Let's get this person in the office to look and see that, oh, it's out of paper. We don't need Carey for this. You understand? So every office generally has that person. So I say to that person, are you ready for Windows 11? They say yes. I go over there, and I cannot get Windows 11 installed on this Core i7 9700K, I think is what I built. Built a lot of them. BIOS is up to date. Well, the darn hard drive is in MBR mode for some reason. I don't know what the heck I did, but clearly something I did. I got to convert MBR mode to GPT without losing the customer's data. Yeah.
Two things. One, you got to check the phone. Second thing is, do you have any drop frames?
Do I have drop frame? You know what? I have not been looking. A little bit of drop frames. So.
Yeah, it's not terrible, but some people are complaining. But it's not.
Okay. We'll keep an eye. It's not terrible, but there are some drop frames.
Okay. Check the phone.
Okay, we'll do that in just a second. I'll just try and wrap this story up.
Yeah, no problem.
So I don't want to leave the client's office. It's a 45-minute drive each way without finishing what I started. I'm thinking it's a Windows 11 upgrade. It should be easy. I couldn't do it remotely because Secure Boot was not enabled. So I go back and I make sure that on the Gigabyte BIOS, the PTT or plus Platform Trust Technology, I think is what it's called. That's basically TPM. Make sure that's on. Okay. Says Secure Boot's got to be enabled. Go back in the BIOS, turn on Secure Boot. Says you can't turn on Secure Boot. You've got CSM on, Compatibility Support Mode. Why would I do that? Turn Compatibility Support Mode off. Save and restart, and the computer goes right back into the BIOS. It doesn't even try to boot anymore. And I go, what are my boot options? It says you don't have any boot options. They're gone. Okay, so turn Compatibility Support Module back on. Windows boots. So there's a command, MBR to GPT, that you can run in basically a command prompt. And it says your drive fails verification for this conversion. Great. So there's a tool, Partition Master from EaseUS, and it has a free version, but it will not do the MBR to GPT conversion on the free version. You got to pay for it. I really don't want to leave this client's office without doing this, but now I'm nervous. What if this doesn't work and it just scatters the drive? I don't want to put everything back on it, the Microsoft Office and all the updates and the drivers, email and printers. So I downloaded Acronis. You get a free trial of Acronis for 30 days. And I imaged the machine over to the server. That took 20 minutes. It was pretty fast. Verified, that included verifying the image. Customer had like 94 gigs on the drives. It didn't take very long. On a 1 gig network, it was pretty quick. Plenty of server space, so that's no problem. Now I've got my safety net. I don't normally image client computers, only the data. Because let's face it, these programs can be reinstalled. As much of it's a hassle. I just don't want it to be my fault. So I got my safety net. And now I'm looking for a coupon code for EaseUS Partition Master, and none of them online work. You know I'm not using Honey, right? You know I've been opposed to that since day one. So I'm like, there's got to be a cheaper version of this. So they want $29.99 for a renewable every month. They're going to auto bill you $29.99. I just need to use it once, as far as I know. Or you can get a lifetime for $39.99, or you can get a lifetime with free upgrades for $69.99. Like, do I want to spend $40, you know, on the middle one, that'll allow me to install it on 2 PCs. That's it. And then how do you move it from one PC to another? I don't know, but I don't think I'm ever going to need it again. But if it solves it for $40 and I can get out of here and not have to make a separate trip, it's worth it. And as I go to leave the program, it says, wait, before you leave, we'll give you $30 off or something that was way bigger than any coupon code. I'm like, oh, I'm listening. It says, click here. And then I click there. And yeah, the price went down to about half. I'm like, all right, for like half price, you know, instead of $70 for the lifetime upgrades, it was $39, something like that. Not quite half, but far more significant of a discount than I could find. And all you had to do was leave the website, move the mouse up to close it out, and wait, here's a better deal. So I bought it, and then I ran the MBR to GPT. It's all a graphical graphical user interface versus the command prompt, right? I could have done all this with the command prompt and figured out where the error was and manually resize the partition. Likely that's a problem. And I didn't want to. I'm like, this is way too involved. If I can just click a thing and have it do it, let's try it. Be a good story to tell later. Now it's later, and here's the story. So it says, okay, this is what you want to do. I say yes. It's going to reboot the computer, and then you get like basically just text on the screen. And it reboots, and it says, okay, we're going to do some more stuff. Again, it looks like DOS or text on the screen. And then it says, on the next reboot, you need to go into your BIOS and turn off CSM, compatibility support mode, and turn on secure boot. So then I go back into the BIOS, I turn on CSM, and I go to, or turn off CSM, and I go to secure boot. Secure boot says, well, you got to save and exit before you can change secure boot. The CSM has to be disabled. And even though I've disabled it, there's no way to apply that without saving and exiting. So I save and exit, back in the BIOS again. Then I go to secure boot. I have to change it from custom to standard and make sure it's in user mode. Then save and exit. And then Partition Manager runs again automatically for a third time, and like some DOS stuff appears, DOS-like text appears. Then it reboots a fourth time, and I'm in Windows. Everything looks the same. Nothing's missing. And I uninstall, well, I check the properties of the C drive. It's now GPT. I run the PC health check to see if it's now Windows 11 compatible. It is. It says you're good to go. I uninstall Acronis, the trial, because I don't need it anymore on that machine. And I uninstalled the EaseUS Partition Master. And then I ran the Windows 11 Update Assistant. And when I left, Windows 11 was installed, updated, everything's working as far as I can tell. All the Office applications, the printers, everything looks good. So while I was waiting for Windows 11 to install, I started checking the other PCs in the office. I was under the impression, when I built these machines 4 years ago, that I was setting them up only with the TPM off, so that Windows 11 wouldn't just suddenly appear one day. Well, apparently somehow, someway, I overlooked some settings. And this would not have been something I could do remotely or walk the customer through, because I'm not familiar enough with that particular motherboard's BIOS to tell the customer which screen and which options. This was all a new experience for me. And I don't know why, but that was the only computer in the office that, well, let me rephrase. There are 2 computers in the office, all with the same motherboard and parts and everything, that for some reason where the hard drive was in MBR mode. The second computer in MBR mode, I ran the DOS command MBR to GPT. Worked fine. And all the other computers I looked at, about 4 or 5 others, again, same motherboard, same BIOS, same CPU, they were already in GPT mode, and all I needed to do was to turn TPM on and secure boot mode on. CSM was not enabled on those machines. That's not like me to do things inconsistently, but I'm the only one who did it. I know it's on me. I don't know what I was thinking 4 years ago. I never saw Windows 11 installation be that difficult before. 5 changes in the BIOS. And now I've got, a license to Partition Master, which, maybe I'll need it again. I haven't needed that software since like Windows 7, maybe XP to Windows 7 days. It's a good piece of software, I just don't need it. But I got this great experience I got to share with you. And this is why when people are thinking about a Windows 11 upgrade being just about your CPU, it's far more complicated than just your CPU. All right, let me take a quick look at the phone. Mara reminds me that we have some emails, so let me take a look. Let's see. Oh, our friend Buster sends us an Amazon gift card, a very generous one. He says, hello, Carey and Mara, just another little gift from your friend Buster. I think we've seen this picture of Buster before. So Buster is Peter Laycock, and his whole career, he's retired now, but his whole career was working on the rail system in Scotland, the mass transit system there. And I love when our viewers send a picture of themselves so we can see what they look like, and you can tell Buster loved his job. I mean, there's not too many people these days that will work 30, 40 or more years in a career without, either hating it or being laid off, right, with all the budget cuts that happen. And it really shows somebody's dedication and passion for what they do. I don't care what you do, as long as you're passionate about it, you love what you do. It doesn't matter if you love doing it for somebody else or you're self-employed, that's not the point. So you just don't see that very much these days, where somebody's had an entire career with one employer to the point of retirement. And it's just very inspiring. Those jobs still exist. They're harder to find today, but it's also harder to find those kind of employees too. That's the only email I see. Was that it? So thankfully, Mara reminds me to check that, because sometimes I'll go a whole show and forget to check the phone. But thank you again, Buster, and I hope you're doing well. And I suppose we can get to a little bit of work here. Okay, she just says yes. That's our email. All right, so what did we get with this case? We've got some documentation, which I actually might need. Some things are quite different. Still trying to figure out if that's plastic or glass. Sounds like glass. We've got, a bunch of hard drive. No, it's not a bunch. We have a bunch of zip ties. We have 2 pairs of hard drive rails. So clearly this will hold 2 3.5-inch hard drives, which I don't use 3.5 hard. I personally do not use or recommend mechanical hard drives, period, unless it's for a server or network attached storage. We keep them out of the boxes now. They're far too volatile. And when a customer does that, they put their whole life in one, they put all their eggs in one basket. And if anything happens to the basket, they freak out and we're back to a high pressure situation again. I recommend, if customers have a lot of data that you need, put it on an external USB drive. Now, if you want that to be mechanical, like a Western Digital MyBook, 24 terabytes if you want, plug it into your USB port. You're not going to notice any speed difference. You aren't. There's no point in putting it in the computer. All that's going to do is make it more difficult for you to get that data off. And what I love about it being USB is if something happens to the computer, as long as you've got all your important stuff on this drive, which you should also be backing up to another drive in case something happens to this drive. You need 2 of them, or you need some cloud storage that can hold whatever the capacity is. So if you get, a damaged drive, something fails, there's a fire, a theft, a flood, any of these things, a virus, that you still have the data somewhere else. You need the data in two places. Just taking it out of the computer isn't enough. We take it out of the computer to two locations. It could be in the cloud. It could be even two backup drives. And you just rotate between them. Keep them updated. Or you don't care about your stuff. You're like, if I lose it, I lose it. And that's fine. Then go ahead and leave the drive in. And please don't stress me out when you freak out because it doesn't work anymore. So the stuff is relatively inexpensive these days, and it's far more convenient for you to help yourself if all you have to do is take your backup drive if the computer fails. Well, take your external drive. It's not a backup drive. Take your external drive and plug it into another computer. The chances of your computer failing and your external drive failing at the same time are pretty low, unless, of course, fires, thefts, floods, things like that. If the computer were to get a virus, or if you were to accidentally delete a file, or if you knocked over the drive and now you've broken it, it's another downside of mechanical drives. I hope you have a second one that wasn't plugged in or is in the cloud somewhere, so you can get all that important stuff back that you were saving on that big drive. The more you want to keep, the more it's going to cost you to keep it. It's true in life. George Carlin used to do a great routine called "A Place for My Stuff." Well, whether your stuff is physical or digital, the more of it you have, the more it's going to cost you to store it. So just keep that in mind if it's worth keeping some things. I had a customer that was saving every Apple movie they downloaded, and I said, it's costing you more to save these movies than if you just paid the $2 every time you wanted to watch them. His idea was, I don't want to pay the $2 again. I said, no, but you're paying $200 to save them. How does that make any sense? It'll take you, you'll have to see a movie 100 times before it'll break even. I'm like, this doesn't make sense. Just pay the $2. How often are you rewatching the same movies? So we do see that a lot on the consumer side, not so much on the business side of things. Consumers tend to be more hoarders, whereas businesses tend to only keep what they're obligated to keep or necessary to keep for their business. And then, of course, if the business is running out of space, there's no argument or debate. We simply upgrade the space, right? It's just that simple. We have some very short cables, power cables. These almost look like little jumper cables for your power. It's pretty unique. I've never seen this before. I wouldn't call them extension cables. They're not long enough. They're like little patch cables, but for power. Look at that. Look at that tiny little thing. And there's one. And these look like, let's see, that's for CPU. These are both CPU. This has got to be, yeah, this is graphics card. And this is 24-pin. See, that bag was never opened. Yet this was a returned product. That was it. I don't think, whoever ordered this, I don't even think they took it out of the box. Oh, because this has its own liquid cooler built into it already, this is your mounting kit for, you know, if you have an AMD or an Intel motherboard, just like any other cooler you would have bought individually. They don't know what motherboard you're going to attach it to. So in years ahead, you got to think about this. If this case is available in 2027 and Intel and AMD, let's say, have a new socket type, if you buy this old case, it may not be compatible with that new type of socket. Okay, how does this open? I see a thumb screw right here. It's really tight, so get a little help with that. And might as well take off, loosen up those on the other side as well. Let's see what we got going on in here. One screw is all I see. Whoop, there it goes. One thumb screw. And then it looks like maybe this pushes out, or does it pull it back? Usually when there's only one tab, it pushes out. Yep. There we go. Oh, that's definitely glass. The film is still on it, the protective film. It's got the metal, like cabinet style nubs here on the top, and then what looks like a couple of tabs here on the bottom that hold it securely in place with one thumb screw. I'm good with one thumb screw. That's as long as it's secure. I'm a big fan of keeping things simple. You don't need to have 6 screws holding the side panel on. Inside, you can finally see the radiator that's in there vertically up front, the RGB fan in the back. This is going to be our liquid cooler water block right here. And oh, we have an ATX 3.0 power connector if you're putting in a new RTX 40 or 50 series graphics card from NVIDIA or the latest AMD Radeon cards. That's the new power connector they use without requiring an adapter. And you can see right here we have a motherboard power connector. This is bizarre. I don't know if it matters what end of this we use. It's got a little cable comb on it. Look at that. You make it look pretty. And you can take this little cable and connect it here and connect that onto your board, and then your power from your power supply is already connected to this point. So instead of running the cable directly to the board, we just jump the two together. It's black with the black case, so your cable management is basically non-existent because you don't have much excess to deal with here. It's built to, to reach across for a smaller board. So you're going to have some excess when we put a full-size board in here, but nowhere near the excess we would have to pull through to the other side. Now I suppose we could probably, I'm going to guess, take that piece out if we didn't want to use it. Now, even though the previous thumb screw just fell out, these two thumb screws on the other side are captive. Be nice if they did it the same way on both sides. Also, this has a pull handle, not a push handle. So it looks like the rear panel comes off completely differently than the glass, which I guess makes sense, but I'm a big fan of consistency. If we're going to do one panel one way, why don't we do the other panel, even if it's made of a different material, using the same single thumb screw? Make them captive or don't, but to do one way and one another feels like they don't go together. Yeah, that's just your standard everyday ordinary side panel, just slides off, whereas the other one pushes straight on. Very different from left to right. What's the word? Asymmetrical? It's very strange. Built-in fan controller right there. Again, that's our water block that's wrapped in foam. There's our 850 watt power supply right down there, so it should be plenty of power. Up top, we've got 2 USB Type A's, a USB Type C, a power button with a light around it, and a brightness button that appears to maybe affect the RGB. If your motherboard doesn't support ARGB, I'm assuming this will have ARGB compatibility. I can't imagine it wouldn't. That would be profoundly and extraordinarily disappointing. This is for people that want to control the RGB with a button. It doesn't give you anywhere near the selection and options, nor does it synchronize with your motherboard. You've got to use the ARGB connector, then you can synchronize and control it all through one piece of software, the one that comes with your motherboard for that. We have a massive power cable here. Very thick power cable. And that's, of course, included because you get a power supply. So now you can hopefully understand a little better why this case is $399. We've got a filter on top, but remember, if your radiator were here and you're blowing air out the top, we don't filter exhaust air. You would leave this off. You don't have to, but if you take this off, it'll breathe a lot easier without any resistance coming from the exhaust air. It's magnetic and just fits right on like that. Down underneath the power supply, I can see we have a filter. It's in a plastic frame, so you don't have to tip the computer on its side to get to it. And it looks good. Whoops. I like being able to just feel for where that tray goes. Remember, the power supply has a fan on the bottom that draws air in. This is basically a vacuum cleaner. And if you are not aware that you have one of these at the bottom of your computer, it is probably strangling your power supply from breathing. And while you may be focused on your CPU temps and your CPU cooler and your GPU temps, so many people fail to give their power supply a thought. How hot is that is your power supply running? Can anybody tell me how hot their power supply is running right now? And when's the last time you checked the dust filter? Because a lot of people go, what dust filter? So while they're fixated on things they don't need to be fixated on, like CPU heat and GPU heat, the thing they should be aware of is this clear, or is this blocking airflow, preventing your power supply from breathing? If I blocked your breathing, I bet you'd notice, and you wouldn't need any special benchmarking software. All you do is look at it. Often not thought of by the most tech-savvy people you'll talk to. They're very confident. They speak all the technical terms. They understand thermal compound and heat. They understand the importance of thermal throttling and how to avoid it. And when you ask them about the power supply, blank look. Oh. Either they don't know they've got a filter, or they've completely forgotten and couldn't tell you, even if they wanted to, how hot their power supply is running, because there's generally no tool to measure that. There's a few power supplies out there that will do it, but it would just be one more thing for people to needlessly obsess over. Just regular checking. Every 6 months, once a year, just check it. Take it outside, blow it out with canned air or a duster. It's nothing you have to pay anybody to do, but if you ignore it, you might be paying somebody to replace your power supply. Okay, the cabling's going to be pretty tight in here. I see they've got some dust caps on. Yeah, it's an ARGB header. That's good. We've got extra cables here. That's our front port umbilicals. That's our USB port, power button, reset button. All of that's here. It's all standard. We've got some silica gel there as well. Desiccant. Do not eat. Throw away. Softly bossy. Throw away how far? Is that? I imagine those are the same instructions on a hand grenade. Anyway, I don't think you're supposed to just toss them. I think with a hand grenade, you should be throwing it as far as you can. What do I know about hand grenades? I do know you're not supposed to eat them. Oh, Uncle Carey, you're so funny. Don't quit your day job. These are the extra power cables coming off of our power supply. We have a bunch of SATA cables and a couple Molex. That's it. And you can see how the power supply is. Oh no, this is a drive cage. This will be where the 2.5-inch drives go. Power supply is back here. Water block is here. Let's take a look at that water block. Well, we want all of these wire ties removed. These long wire ties that have a pretty nice thick wire in them. These are good to hold on to because, well, just the other day I was doing putting some wires away that were really long. And rather than waste a zip tie that I have to cut off, I'd rather just grab a wire tie, wrap it around the wire, and then cut it to whatever length I need it, and then use the rest. It's not that they're expensive, it's just I've already got it. Why throw it away? I know there's going to be wires or things I need to wrap up that I don't necessarily want to waste a zip tie on because it's just temporary, or I don't want to have to get the cutters and risk cutting into the wire to get the zip tie off. But I wouldn't leave a wire tie in a computer because they're made of metal, and over time they break, they get brittle, and then they can fall and short out behind the motherboard. So if you do have any wire ties in your computer, I strongly recommend you remove them. Nylon zip ties are the way to go because when they get brittle and break, they're plastic, they're nylon, they won't short anything out. We have 2 more connectors up here. This will go to your CPU power. Again, just little patch cable. I love that idea. I love that idea. It's just like how we hook up networking. Only we're doing it now with power. It's a cleaner look. All right, let's get this other zip tie cable wire tie off of here. Again, it's a good length of reusable wire tie. You'll be seeing that again in pieces. As I need it, I'll be cutting it and tying up things. Especially if I just want something tied up and pushed off to the side. Like as I rotate this, you see how all those cables are dangling around? Probably should have left the wire tie on them. I might have to put a wire tie back on them. Let's see, what does this look like? We've got the pump or the block right here. Oh, fancy. It's got a like a copper looking edge to it. It says grease it and then remove it. So this is the bottom. What's interesting, this is clever. If you look right at the this other camera up, what they want you to do is they want you to put your thermal material on this sticker. And the holes in the sticker are going to leave this pattern of thermal material. And when you peel the sticker off, it's going to look like a little honeycomb of perfectly applied thermal material. Does it actually make any difference in how it cools? No, it doesn't, but it's pretty neat. What are you looking for? Are you just checking out the case?
I just think this is really, really cool.
And then the other side of the cooler has a pretty unique design on it.
Forget the little screw thing.
What are you talking about?
The screw stock scores.
Screw stock.
There's a panel.
There's a
panel. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So what they were making a big deal out of, which I don't think is that big of a deal,
I think it's neat.
is there's a place to keep your spare screws, I guess. I think it's right here, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or is it back behind?
No,
So apparently, you take this off somehow. I'm not quite sure how this comes off.
push.
No, it looks like it pops out.
Oh, cool!
And you've got a bunch of screws.
That's so neat.
For doing any upgrades or
That's
work on it.
Come on, that's neat.
Yeah, no, I'm not opposed to it. I mean, somehow I've gone through 34 years without needing that. And Dell and HP would do something very similar. So, yeah, it's just a bunch of spare screws.
You want to eat this later or now?
The desiccant?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a little dry.
You want to sprinkle it on your food?
It needs some salt. Now I gotta figure out how that goes back on. Well, let's just leave it off. And then back here we have one more piece of styrofoam that looks like it needs to come out. And that is a full-size power supply there, in case you were wondering. It's not the small form factor that the Encore 100 had. This piece of foam can go over there. And then we'll give it the full 360 with the close-up camera. I realize it's a little off to the side, but I have to bring the motherboard up and take that cooler off of the board before we can even think about going any further with the build here. But I just wanted to give you a little bit of a closer look at the design of the case. Then we'll go back over here to the wider angle. There I am. Corey says that's a beautiful color. Kevin says that's a nice case. Phil Stodd said, hey, that's a nice feature for the screws. Steve McCure says soy sauce goes good with those desiccant packets. Davis Parsons says you're going to need those screws for the motherboard. Oh, I guess I guess that makes sense. This is just the cooler install, which means any screws needed for the drive trays, solid state drives, or motherboard mounting and standoffs, I believe, are on the other side here. Yeah, we're going to be using some of those. It looks like they didn't just put some of them there, all of them are there. And then you'll just leave what's left over and put the panel back over it. Thank you, Davis. Appreciate that. Buster says he just had to reload his browser, it crashed on them. Mine crashed on me too, Buster. We have a live chat memory leak, as every YouTube channel does, and I don't know when Google's going to get around to fixing that, but appreciate you letting us know that you're still suffering from it. We're still suffering from it. This has been going on for nearly a year now, since April or May. So we're getting close to a year that Google has not addressed this. If you turn off live chat, the memory leak goes away. But if you turn off live chat, we won't be able to talk to you. So if your browser crashes during the broadcast, it's not you. It's not us. It's Google. Just hit the refresh button. Just looking through your chat messages before I get this out of the way and get the motherboard up here. Our friend Ron Varnish says he's not feeling well. We hope you feel better soon. Moonwolf Hunter says, I thought AMD wasn't going to use the NVIDIA power connector. It's not an NVIDIA power connector. That's an ATX 3.0 power connector. I don't know if AMD uses it or not, but it's an ATX standard. It's not an NVIDIA thing. Phil Stodd said, it seems like CoolerMaster put some thought into designing this case. It's impressive. I agree. Yeah. But it also explains the price. It's definitely an expensive case. But again, you're probably going to spend that much for a 360 millimeter cooler and power supply that's 850 watts regardless. So why not have it already done for you? Ron Barnish mentioned he retired as a forklift tech for more than 45 years. The same company, though the company had 4 name changes. See, you just don't hear that very often anymore. I think that's awesome. Buster says he did 50 years and 6 months working on the railway. Wow, 50 years. So if he started at 18 years old, maybe he started younger than that. Maybe he started when he was 6. Different labor laws back then. I know Peter's not that old. He had to be like 6. Bob Claiborne contributed a $5 super chat. Sorry, I just saw that, but thank you for your super chat contribution and your support and your friendship. Thanks for hanging out with us here. John says he'd love to see a cooking show with Carey. We have the Cooking with Carey channel. It's always been there. There's not much on it. I haven't done anything really in Studio C yet. My hands are filled with other projects, but yeah, we were doing quite a few there at Studio B. But Cooking with Carey is the name of the channel. I'm a very particular eater. I don't like foods touching on the plate, and I don't like foods that are mixed together, most ethnic foods. I won't eat them. It's just got to be plain, simple, just like me. I eat like a 4-year-old, basically. Let's see. Probably not the most mind-blowing food channel you've ever seen, unless you're also a very particular eater. And you'll say, finally, there's a channel for people like me. There's not too many people that that's going to apply to. But you might find it weirdly interesting. How is he still alive eating that? Nobody knows. .3D Everything said they retired in 2023. Corey wants to know if we're going to put the computer back on display that we stream with. We still have a lot of work ahead of us. You know, our main goal is to be able to continue to make content. We can polish it and make it look pretty as time permits. There are plans, but so many other plans are ahead of those. They have to happen first. And I have to do everything myself, basically. So many hours in a day, so much I can do. But yeah, we intend to do something more with this space. I just haven't been able to find the time or energy. But it will happen. Mark my words, it's going to happen. Peter Laycock said he started at the railway at 21 years old, and before that he worked at a sawmill for 5 years. You still have all your fingers? Working at a sawmill sounds... Actually, I know some people lost fingers working at the railway too. Or messing around with rail cars. Probably more accurate. Because Peter likes dangerous work. It's a thrill seeker. All right. Let's see, how am I going to find some room on this table for what we have to do? I guess we'll move that over here. And we're definitely going to need all this stuff. So I'll just set it up here. Set it over here. Because if I put it over here, I'm going to have to tilt the case down and put the motherboard in, and I'll have to move it again. Thumb screw, instructions. Make some room. Having a big bench, good lighting, anti-static environment, don't work on carpet. Kind of missed the kitchen. Let's get this pushed off to the side. Not precariously, but enough that we have room for the board. And I have to step around to get the board because clearly I didn't have any room for it before. Okay, so here is the board, if you remember. This is now the third video. The first one on this motherboard was introducing you to the Z890 Nova. The second one was evaluating this cooler because I used an Intel stock cooler, which was nowhere near adequate enough. On these new Ultra processors, they do run hot. And right now, Intel has not released the non-K versions that include coolers. They're not available yet. So they only released 3 of these Ultras lineup, which is the Ultra 5, Ultra 7, Ultra 9, and only the pinnacle of each series. That's it. That's how they always introduce new processors every year, typically around the fall or winter time. And after the new year, they'll come out with the other i5 models, other i7 models, and other i9 models in that family. They have not done so yet. So I just put a stock Intel cooler on it to give us something so we could evaluate the motherboard, install Windows, but we weren't doing any pressure testing on the machine as far as, you know, Cinebench or anything really resource intensive, because I knew that cooler was not going to be adequate. The folks at Alzai reached out, asked us if we'd evaluate their new air cooler, which has a LCD screen on the top like many liquid coolers do, which makes this, in many cases, more expensive than a liquid cooler. I found the installation process a little confusing. I don't like the additional fan on it, and it's very loud, and it's still inadequate for cooling this 125 watt processor. It got so loud, I had to really speak up to be heard. And I really like working with the folks at Alzai. I think they're great people, but their products are not up to the standards we expect here in America. They're an Asian brand. I don't know what they're comparing themselves to. but we know of other thermal solution companies like Thermalright and Scythe that are also, most all of them based in Asia, though we have like Be Quiet and Noctua based in Austria and Germany. I expect better, especially at this price. This is like a $120 cooler, and it's basically useless on an Ultra 7. It just isn't going to do it. It's very loud, and it's convoluted in the sense that the display only appears one direction, but when you put the heatsink on, it's the same on both sides, and without the display being lit up, how do you know if it's upside down or not until you get it all mounted and turn it on and realize your display's upside down? And their software doesn't allow you to change the direction of the display because the airflow needs to move a certain direction, requiring the display to be the proper orientation, but there's nothing that tells you what the orientation is until after you've got it mounted. I don't like the proprietary fans. If the fans fail, I don't know what you're going to do. So for $120, I think you'd be better off with a Mugen 6. Get rid of the screen, you don't need it. The screen's probably adding $60 to the price of any cooler. Liquid cooler's probably $60 more if it's got a liquid screen. If a liquid cooler has a little like 2-inch screen on it, you're paying extra, a lot extra for that. In fact, while we're on that subject, I want to show you something. We've got a build coming up, and I needed a white 240 millimeter cooler. And if you're wondering how much money these companies make profit, just in general, cooler companies, I'm going to show you. If we come over here to Amazon, and I'm going to look for 240, come on keyboard, 240 millimeter. I'm going to switch the screen over in a minute. Let me see if I can bring the screen up first, the search results. 240 millimeter white AIO. Okay, that's what I'm looking for to go into this future build. And here's what I want to show you are those search results. If we come over here to the window capture, we've got $259 because it's got the screen on it. ID cooling is $119, and it has a screen on it, but I don't know if they adequately perform the same in noise and quality. Maybe they do. I don't know. Keep scrolling down. There's a Kraken, another Kraken 160. No, is that the same one? No, that's a different one. So yeah, this one just has a set display versus a customizable display. And then if we come down a little further, Thermalright has a cooler, liquid cooler, 240 millimeters, RGB fans, $50. $50. And if you don't care what this part looks like, 46 if you want sort of a more basic. And according to the comments and the reviews, people say, hey, it's easy to install, it's quiet. But here's the thing, because it's a Corsair case, if we were looking at a Corsair 240 millimeter white cooler, this one from Trikes has like a 3-dimensional display, $300. So that's 6 times more money. Then if we look at Thermalright, they've got another one here with a display on it for $20 more. Kind of wish I'd have saw that one first. I didn't see that one until just now. That's pretty interesting. So you don't have to give up the display. But they're adding a premium price because of the display. So Corsair has a couple of white 240 millimeter all-in-ones, 132, 102. But here's the deal. You want that screen on it? Does anybody want to guess what that's going to cost? Let me go up here. I'll just add the word Corsair. Thinking, you know, the Corsair cooler will match the Corsair case. And if it's got the display, it's $199.99. So basically, for that price, you're getting that display. As far as I can tell, that's the only difference. And the Thermalright is $50. I could buy 4 240 millimeter all-in-one radiators with RGB fans that are supposedly as good as, if not better than, the Corsair fans. I don't know if that's true or not, for 1/4 of the price. So does that mean Corsair's making $150 profit on this item? Possibly. It is possible. So when you're the gamer and you want that RGB and you want that LCD screen inside of the computer, you are paying for that. I mean, they're making money from you. And for the rest of us that like to buy more practically, we really appreciate you guys who spend that money on needless things, because that's where the companies are making their money. They're not making money as much from people like me that are trying to be more practical. They're making a much smaller, 10, 15%. Versus on products like that, they could be earning 100% or more on profit for all I know. Those prices are crazy, especially that Trix cooler. That Trix cooler, if you wanted a 360 millimeter version of that, up here, just change that to 360. We'll change this to Trix. This isn't even the best cooler you can buy. The Trix cooler is $350. And as a cooler, it's okay with regards to how well it cools. But as to how cool it looks, that's what you're paying for. Because if you look at it in the right angle, where the two screens meet in the middle, it'll look like objects are coming out of the screen without having to wear any 3D glasses. But you've got to be standing in the right place to see it. And that's adding an additional $150 to the price of this all-in-one cooler, essentially. And as a cooler, it's not the best cooling cooler. It's adequate, but it's one of the most expensive ones. Now, if you want a cooler that works really well and has the display, then you can look at the, and I don't know how to spell it, but just to compare, Ryujin, I don't know how it's spelled. Yeah, Ryujin 360 at $289. This is actually a really, really good cooler. It does a fantastic job, and it's cheaper than the Trix, and it's made by ASUS, so you know it's got the quality in it. And the Trix might have good quality too, just not as familiar with their brand as ASUS. Now, of course, if you want the ARGB Extreme version of this, the price is going to go up because you want all the lights. You're basically at the same price as the Trix. It doesn't look as cool as the Trix, but it cools much better than the Trix cools. So there you go. Make up your mind. What do you want? But $350 to cool down a $350 CPU on a $200 motherboard with a $120 power supply and, $150 case, then you've got $100 to $200 with a solid state drive and $100 to $200 in RAM, and you're at $1,200, $1,300 quickly. So, and that's with a mid-range CPU. If you want to put the high end, 9800 X3D, you're looking at around over $500 after sales tax. Or if you're looking at an Intel Ultra 9, which, by the way, I think those are back in stock here at Amazon, $600 plus sales tax, that'll put us about $650 after sales tax. You can see how a build using these kind of extreme parts is easily going to get you close to $1,500. So set your expectations and your budget accordingly is all I'm saying. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I can build 3 computers for the price of that one. And you'd be hard pressed to tell them apart when doing ordinary things like browsing the web, using Office applications. And all those prices I talked about did not include a discrete graphics card. That's another $1,000 to $2,000. So now you're at $3,500. For gaming, let's trade places financially if you have that kind of money, because I want to be you for a day. I want to spend just having, what do they call that when you have extra money that you can just like expendable cash? That you could just drop $3,500 on a gaming rig and still have the time to play the games. Yeah, I want to trade places with you for a while. Wonder what it's like to live like that. I mean, as a teenager, that'd be great, don't get me wrong. But as an adult with responsibilities, to have that kind of expendable cash, I can have my fantasies. So we are not going to use this cooler on anything. Unfortunately, I really wanted to like it. I was really, really hopeful that Alzai was going to get us a product that has been improved from the first product we looked at, which was also difficult to install and had very loud fans. Nothing appears to have changed, unfortunately, other than the design of how it looks. It's just not that effective. It's all about, unfortunately, it's all about how it looks, not so much about how it installs or how it performs with regards to its cooling capabilities and acoustics. But it looks good. It does look good. Like I said, we're not beholden to any companies to withhold our concerns, and we're not doing it to cause any harm. We're just trying to be transparent and clear, voice our concerns with the hope being, oh, I didn't have that off, with the hope being that, just taking this off, sorry, I thought the camera was on. With the hope being we're helping the company improve the product. That's all I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to discourage them. I just want them to take under consideration what our concerns are and hopefully address them. Because if they do that, we'll be much happier with their products and we could recommend them. But we're not at that stage yet. So anyway, again, I don't know when I accidentally didn't turn on that camera, but I was just taking the fan off and unplugging it from the motherboard. That's all I've done. Now I'm going to take the heatsink off. Now Alzai does include a fantastic screwdriver. I mean, that's one of the, it's got a great strong handle. It's reversible from a flat edge to a Phillips, and you need that to get down, to get to the mounting screws down below. Now, we first saw the included screwdrivers that were decent coming from our friends over at Scythe. Not our friends, but we worked a lot with Scythe independently. We bought a lot of Scythe products and I sold a lot of Scythe products, but we didn't really work with Scythe at all. So I don't know why I said they're our friends, but definitely I bought a lot of their products and put my reputation behind them because I felt they were a good value. They looked great. No RGB stuff. We're just talking like a Mugen 5. I don't know how many Mugen 5s I've installed, but probably 60 to 80 of them. There's very few products that I can use that much of universally on different AMD, Intel, and customer builds. But more and more things have gotten towards RGB, and that means more about the looks. It means more liquid coolers, even when they're not necessary, because the customers want to see blinky lights. And that's definitely not the way the industry was when I started. I'm not a big fan of the industry moving that way, but if I want to go in business and stay in business, I have to adapt. And if at some point I feel like I cannot adapt to it, like if everybody goes to smartphones and they want us to be able to start building these, I can't. I don't have the clarity of vision or the dexterity that I had with my fingers 25 years ago. And at that point, it's time for me to look for another career or to focus in a more of a specialty software situation where you could be like a QuickBooks specialist and you can make a lot of money as a specialist. Just like a doctor that's a specialist generally gets paid better than a general practitioner. If you specialize in a particular software that's popular or for a particular software in an industry, a lot of dentists use a software called Dentrix. You could become a Dentrix authorized repair person dealing with their Dentrix servers and Dentrix clients and work with Dentrix to even recommend you so you don't have to knock on doors. The dentist will call saying we're having a problem. The Dentrix folks say, let's see, in your zip code, we have a service technician named CareyHolzman you can call. And the work comes to you. And you can bill much higher hourly rates because how many people know how to work on Dentrix? And your clients aren't cheap folks at home who don't have any money. They're dentists, right? So they shouldn't balk at the price. They got a business to run, and it's a business that, well, you know what a dentist costs, right? At least here in America, we don't get that stuff for free. Okay. Yeah, unfortunately, as much as I want to like this cooler, you're never going to see this cooler again. I can't imagine any scenario where this would be acceptable. So what I'm going to do is just set it aside, and I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet, but I know I'm done with it. I do appreciate that Alzai sent it to us so we could review it and evaluate it. I'm just sad that that evaluation fell short of expectations. Honestly, if I thought Alzai wasn't going to improve what we saw from them before, I would have politely declined the offer, because I'd rather do that than say anything derogatory. But at the same time, once I'm committed to it, it is what it is. And I have to be honest about it. I'm trying to look for a little baggie I can put all these extra parts in. Nick Caffrey said, just today I had to pay €255 to my dentist. We don't have dental insurance or treatment here in Ireland unless you pay. Didn't, in the UK, didn't the NHS cover dental until you were 18 years old? Or is that no longer a thing? Or is my information wrong? I know there used to be a time, or I've heard there used to be a time, when people wanted all of their teeth removed before they were 18 because they knew they weren't going to have any dental insurance after 18. And so if you just had all your teeth removed, you solved any root canal issues and cavity issues. Or is that just false internet information that I have? Oh, I do have a bigger bag I can use. Good. Ireland and the UK are separate countries. Well, Ireland and England, they're all the UK though, right? Anyway, I heard that about England, not about the UK. I heard it about England. So correction on my part. Oh yeah, we had those little washers I forgot about. So I'll save all that in case this ends up getting reused by somebody else, but I'm not going to reuse it. So that goes with that. I can wire tie this stuff back up. Remember I said I'd be using those wire ties again. Just didn't know it was going to be so soon. So we can take this, wrap it around like that. This would be an example, like I wouldn't want to waste a nylon zip tie. And you see I only use what I need, and that way I still have a lot more to do the rest of the other cables, whether that's right now or in the future. Keeps it out of the landfill a little bit longer than what it would normally go, since we can reuse it. Instead of a one-time use, it'll at least be a two-time use anyway. This is just an extension cable. how much of that I still have left. All right. I do like the screwdriver. So these are also mounting parts. This is for AMD. I'm just trying to keep everything together. These installation manual can go in there as well. And I don't have to wonder what the heck is in this bag. Where does this go? And then I've got to get a paper towel and wipe the thermal compound off the bottom of the heatsink and the top of the CPU heat spreader. And then these little rubber plugs can go back on. The fan I'll reattach. Oh, and this extension cable needs to go in the bag as well. That way, if I'll give this to somebody or something, if they want to torture themselves and use it, have at it. They'll have everything they need. I won't have to say, did I put those screws? This does get to be a problem when you deal with, you know, so many computers. I'm going to grab a paper towel, so bear with me for a second. Now, when it comes to cleaning the thermal compound, you don't need to get a cotton swab and rubbing alcohol until you get the bulk of the thermal paste off first. If you're taking the same cooler off that you're putting on in the same direction, you don't need to change the thermal paste. I mean, not unless it's like 10 years old, and even then you probably don't need to do it. You probably just want to do it. But need and want are two different things. So because we're putting a completely different cooler on, I'm going to put on the thermal compound that they provide and apply it using their applicator, even though you don't need to. We're going to follow it the way they want us to, because they believe that will lead you to the best experience. That doesn't mean that I can't do a better job than they do. They're trying to make it universally the same for everyone. So someone really knowledgeable knows what they're doing might be able to do better, and somebody who's never done it before without that instruction or help would do it worse. So they find a comfortable middle. They say, well, if everybody does it this way, everybody will have the same experience, and it'll be neither extraordinary nor will it be bad. It'll be where we want it to be as our standard, that you don't need any special talents or tools to just follow our steps, and we can reassure you you're going to have a good experience. But if you have tools or talent that exceeds that of an ordinary user, you could probably improve upon their default way of doing it, which is sort of a boilerplate standard to ensure quality regardless. Okay, that's pretty common, and it makes sense when you think about it. You want to avoid upset customers and support calls because they don't have the right tools, talent, or instruction that's clear to have a good experience with your product. And that's going to mean negative reviews, more time on the phone, maybe more return product, and maybe fewer repeat buyers. Okay, so we got that out of the way. It's messy. I just wanted to get it out of here. Apologize for that little momentary off-camera activity there. Let's turn this around and put these little plugs back in it. That one there. This one over here. These plugs also have an up and a down, and I cannot tell which way they're supposed to go. There's a lot of ambiguity with which side is up and which side is down with every factor of this cooler, from which side goes up, which side the fan goes on, which way these plugs go in. There's no arrows or indicators either on the device or in the instructions. You just have to put it together and see if it's working. And I just think that's just not acceptable. Okay, so all of this can be set aside. We'll keep it all together. I'll just put it here so I don't have to walk too far, and I'll deal with that later. Okay. The motherboard we've previously prepped. It's got Windows 11 Pro. It's got all the latest updates and BIOS from when we last turned it on. There's probably some minor updates since then. I guess the first thing we need to do is mount the motherboard here into the case. I think this is going to look fantastic. This board has a really neat purple, black and purple look. It's very unique looking. And it also has the armor, this metal shield on the back plate. Sometimes makes these a little more difficult to install. And you're never going to see it. I could do without this plate. But it makes the board a lot heavier than what you might expect. This is also a giant heatsink. Normally the I/O cover is just a cheap piece of plastic. Not on this board, it ain't. And then if you look around the back, we have a ton of USB ports on this. That includes Thunderbolt, it includes Wi-Fi built in. This has, I think, a kitchen sink in here too. I'm not sure. It's a lot. And it is a little dusty. Apologize for that. It's been sitting a little longer than I wanted it to. It's got this graphics card release mechanism. So if you do put a graphics card in here and you need to take it out, you just slide this lever back right here. Super easy, barely an inconvenience. So again, this motherboard is the ASRock, the name of it right there. Z890 Nova. Lots of USB, lots of I/O. We have the ability to add more M.2s underneath this giant heatsink with the release of a lever. This heatsink just pops off. And there's 3 more M.2 drives. Space for 3. And we've got our big one, Gen 5, right underneath this big one. You can see we haven't even, oh, this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 NVMe's plus our main one for a total of 6 M.2 NVMe drive slots. This thing is over the top crazy. And I've got to tell you, usually a motherboard like this is over $500. I think ASRock wanted $350 for it. Brand new, when it just came out and was fresh. Like that price is only going to go down in some time here. Might have already gone down. And then once you put your NVMe drives in, you just push this panel back against there's a tab that goes into a slot, and then you push it straight down, and it locks on. That's it. I mean, I really like the Asus ProArt Z890 that had a very similar toolless way to get to your NVMe drives with a lot of ports underneath. But it was on a hinge and it opened like a hood, and it was even more advanced than this, more convenient, but also about $200 more in cost. So there are options, right, depending on how much you want to spend. That is really welcome. And I really like the color scheme on this board. It's so unique. And I think it's going to be the perfect board to go into this case. I hope I'm right. And with that cooler, we should be able to keep this 125 watt CPU nice and cool. If anything, that cooler's overkill for this CPU, which is better to have too much than too little. As long as it's quiet and it looks good, it's going to be reliable, super fast. I think we're going to have a really nice system here. But also, this is not an $800 build, right? If you've got $400 into the case, power supply, cooler, and then we have another $300 into the CPU, $350 into the motherboard, say, I don't know what this RAM is. It's probably $200 worth of RAM there. Plus, we have an NVMe Gen 5, 2 terabyte drive, which is probably $350. And then Windows 11, which is, you know, we buy the Windows 11 keys cheap from SCD keys. They're $16 or something. Windows 10 Pro key that we use on Windows 11 Pro. You can add all that up and give you an idea what today's price would be at cost. In other words, that would be making no money on labor. This would be you buying the parts yourself and doing it yourself. If you were going to do this for a living, you'd have to get paid for your time. Then you'd also have to warranty it yourself too. So then how much is it worth? How much would you have to sell it for to make it worth your time and to make it worth the future time for any support issues? What would you need to charge extra for that? Then suddenly when you think about all that, you realize the value of building it yourself and being your own support. can take, you know, $500 to $800 off of the price of the machine. Because somebody's got to pay for it. Set this down. Okay, now the good news for me is when I set it down to put the motherboard in, the excess screws that we need are on this side. Can you imagine if they were on the other side? That would be frustrating. Let's see if I can get this seated in here. I'm going to just dry fit this and make sure all of our standoffs are in the right place. I see 9 oh, I can already see we're missing a standoff. Typically, these ATX boards will have 3 holes across the top and the bottom and the middle. This one adds this additional hole right there that is normally only found on micro ATX boards, but still totals 3 from top to bottom. It's pretty unusual that we have that extra one, but this case will accommodate that. It's just not in there by default. If we don't use it, nothing bad's going to happen. But if we've got the standoffs and the screws, I feel like we should do it right. There's no reason not to. If you have all the screws, standoffs, and the motherboard, the case rather accommodates for it. That's why those extra screws and parts are there. So let's use them. Now looking here, we have little tiny thumb screws, but I don't see any standoffs. Now this motherboard will accommodate ATX, micro ATX, or mini ITX motherboards. Of course, they're going to look tiny in this case unless you go ATX. It does not officially support extended ATX. Those power connectors might get in the way that are back on the back of the motherboard tray. Let's go back to the parts over here and see, did they give us any standoffs? These are all the cooler install parts. These are the hard drive install parts. And nylon zip ties. So it's definitely not in that bag. It's definitely not here. So maybe there's more than just cooler stuff in this bag. I hope. That's cooler. Oh, we have a bunch of stuff here and a big empty bag. I like how they put the bags in a bag and a case in a box that was shipped in a box from Amazon. It's not like we're generating any waste whatsoever. All right, we got a bunch of bags in here. What do we got? This is definitely for the cooler. 4 bracket screws. That's got to be for the cooler. Nuts. That's for the cooler. LGA screws is for the cooler. Intel bracket. AMD bracket. It's cooler. And cooler. So yeah, it's just for the cooler. Okay, so where are my motherboard standoffs? That's a pretty standard thing. We've got thermal compound and the other cooler bag, right, with the bracket, but no screws in there. So unless they're in here and I'm just not seeing them, this all appears to just be for hard drives, 3.5-inch drives, drive rails, washers, the screws for the drive rails. There does not appear to be any motherboard standoffs in here. Are there extra standoffs somewhere else? There does not appear to be. You'd think at this price we would get a couple extra standoffs. They pre-installed 9 of them, which is standard. And again, we don't have to use it. I can get a nylon motherboard standoff and pop it in there. You've seen me do that in previous videos. I did it a bunch at Studio B when we dealt with a lot of boards that had that MATX mounting hole, which it shouldn't have, honestly. to give us the mounting hole for MATX and ATX adds an additional screw that's redundant and we don't need it. But I'm obsessive and it really bothers me to just have a hole there. And you would think, I would think, a standoff should be pretty standard stuff. Nobody would ever complain if they gave you a few too many. I'm just trying to think if there's somewhere else it could be. And those were the only bags I had. Somebody in the chat said they built one of these. Did you get any extra motherboard standoffs? Davis Parsons, that's what I'm thinking of. Davis said it should be the bright screw in the tower right of the screws. So that bright screw is a thumb screw. There's a bright silver screw here. And what this is a little socket for standoffs. That's to remove any standoffs, but there's no spare standoff. This is a standoff socket, the silver thing. Now, I don't use these because I have a socket on a ratcheting driver that's a 5mm, so I don't have to use a Phillips screwdriver adapter. I just use my tool here. So that is for the standoffs, for installation and removal, but it is not a standoff. Standoff should be black. Now, there are 2 additional holes here that are empty, but sometimes they would put extra standoffs on the motherboard tray, like off to the side. I'm not seeing them. You know what? Let's take a look at the manual, because normally they say what the case is supposed to come with. Because this case was supposedly returned, maybe I just didn't get them. It says there's a standoff socket tool, cable ties, hard drive brackets, SSD dampering pads, those are those rubber washers, SSD mounting, these are the little thumb screws that are in this foam pad, these little tiny ones. That's for mounting 2.5-inch SSDs. Again, we're not using any of those, they're way too slow. And then of course you've got just your regular case screws, common screws. Everything else is for cooling. So apparently they don't include any additional standoffs. But I got a little kludge, a little secret. The standoffs they use are typically commonly found in other cases. They're not always the same though. They could be different heights or different screw depths or thread variations. So if we have extra standoffs from other CoolerMaster or possibly even NZXT or Corsair, those might fit, they might be the right ones. Or I use my nylon standoff and just plug the hole. For all of this to work the way it should be, everything should match. So I shouldn't have a brass standoff included as a spare. You understand what I'm saying? That's sloppy. That's like somebody at home doing work. Generally speaking, if you're building a black case, you're going to be using black screws. You're not going to mix different color standoffs. That's very unprofessional. And typically, there's no case manufacturer that's a big brand name that does that. You'll see that from the cheap cases like from AliExpress, where there'll be like brass standoffs in a black case. It looks terrible, even though you're going to cover them up with a motherboard. Once you get accustomed to a certain minimal level of expectation, going any less than that feels very unprofessional, very amateurish. So my debate is, do I look for a spare standoff? I wonder if a Corsair 200R standoff would work. Remember, the standoffs may have different threads on them and maybe at different heights. And if you do it wrong and you end up with a warped motherboard because you just didn't want an empty hole, that's pretty stupid. The safest thing to do would be to just put a nylon standoff spacer in there, or just leave it alone and leave it empty. But again, it's going to look like whoever built it missed a screw. Just disappointed at this price level that they didn't give us extra standoffs, but they gave us a standoff tool to move the ones we have. So we need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 standoffs, and we have 9. That's it. And you're just expected to move the 9 around with the tool that they include to meet your needs. But what if you need 10 at $400 for a case? Too bad, so sad. So I have found something I really don't like. It's very, very minor, but that's what makes it so annoying, right? It's like all you had to do was include an extra standoff. That's all you had to do. It's not like they don't have them, but they're being a little selfish with them. And if the case was $50, I understand. But at this price point, being selfish, well, let me see. What did I do with my little nylon standoffs? Because I guess that's what I end up doing here. Let me just check one thing. I have a bunch of standoffs from Corsair 200Rs. Now, even though this is CoolerMaster and not Corsair, we might get lucky. They might be using the same standoff. So let me take a quick look over into my spare parts bag here. I know I have tons of those because I built a lot of 200Rs. Okay, that's definitely not what I want. Yeah, getting warmer. Ah, here we go. Let's see. Those aren't standoffs. I'm finding everything that I wanted yesterday. Come on now. Ouch. Sharp edges. What did I do with those? One of these days I will have Studio C better organized with proper drawers for things. But until then, we do what we gotta do to get the job done right. Yeah. I am not looking in the right bag. What's the other bag I would have put this in? Oh, this bag over here. Feel like I'm getting warmer. Squirrel mode activated. Where did I bury my nuts? This would be a good time for a commercial to play, wouldn't it? Ah, so close. Wait. What's that? What's that? Oh. I'm finding everything but what I'm looking for. Oh, come on, Carey. I found them and they're way too big. All right, well, that was a big waste of time. They're way too big, too tall. Okay, back to the nylon standoffs. Those should be in this bag. Or did I move them earlier? Well, rats. I think I moved them. So I had the standoffs over here, and I had the nylon standoffs. I think we used them on camera about 2 months ago. And I think I left the bag back here somewhere, so I didn't have to go all the way over there off camera to find it. We shouldn't have to do this. We should have everything we need. This is all brand new stuff. Now, if I was building something used or carrying something over from an existing system, then this is typical. But brand new, I shouldn't have to do this, nor should you. What the heck did I do with my standoffs? Well, I know I had them back here. Did I move them, or did they go all the way into the back of the drawer and I can't see them? Where did they go? They're definitely not in the drawer. You know, it's one thing to do this when I'm working alone. It's another thing to be live on video and having to do this during a live video. It's frustrating. If I had known, I would have had this already prepped. But this is what happens in the real world of repair, by the way. You'll go to a customer site based on what information the customer gives you for what service they need and bring the tools and equipment you need. Then when you get there, you find out customer wasn't being completely fully disclosing or transparent about what they needed, and you end up having to drive all the way back again to get whatever tools or equipment you need to do the job, which is very frustrating when there's only so many hours in a day, and if you're self-employed and you're not working and you're in the car, you're losing money. So it's no worse than being live on video and you got the world watching you looking for some part, and there's thousands of parts around here, and I'm trying to identify and locate one part out of thousands. And I have a system, and my system is mostly organized piles. And there's a certain pile it should be in. And I'm struggling right now because Murphy's Law says this will happen on a live video. And I really don't want to move forward without it, because that means I have to take it all back out again 5 minutes after I end the video and I find the thing I was looking for. So just bear with me for just a little bit longer. I know I'm close to finding what I need. I just don't know why I didn't put it in a drawer. And it should be have been within arm's reach. It's not where it's supposed to be. At this point, if it's not in any of these locations, what I think has happened is I did a little cleaning up. It was getting a little crowded back here where I stand. And I must have said, oh, I haven't used these in a long time. I'll just put them back. Huh. So just hang in there. Chat amongst yourselves. It's live and unscripted. What do you expect? Something so simple. I really, really thought a case of this quality and price would not do this to me. Wow. There's two locations that I keep this stuff, and it's in neither place, or it's buried under something, and I just am not seeing it. That is not like me. Must have been a different Carey that did that. Huh. Wow. Well, I know I've got them, and I know they're here. And this is why it's important that I put things back where they belong, because clearly I did not do that. You getting tired of looking at an empty wall?
No, with the headphones on, that noise accident.
That's me. That's my squirrel mode.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's nice.
I just don't know where my standoffs went. I have that Ziploc bag that has like 50 nylon standoffs in it. And I swear I left it back here. And if it is back here, I don't know where it is. So I don't know what choice I have at this point but to build without it. But I just don't want to. I don't know. It probably should have been in this drawer. I just don't use them much these days, so I can understand the drawer space is limited, why I wouldn't have left them there. It's not a big deal. It's a very inexpensive part, and it doesn't even need to be used. And I can't emphasize that enough. The fact that I was abandoned by CoolerMaster on this, or the fact that ASRock adds that extra mounting hole for micro ATX on a standard ATX board, I don't know who to blame. If I knew where I put my stuff, the fact that I don't know where it's at is me to blame. The fact that I need it is because I didn't get an extra one from CoolerMaster, and they're to blame. But the fact that there's an extra mounting hole that's a micro ATX mounting hole, in addition to the 9 additional holes we have, is overkill and unnecessary, and ASRock is to blame. Well, let's just move on. I don't know what else to do. Set the board in here. That is a heavy motherboard, let me tell you. Our rear cable, the rear fan cable, is a little bit in the way. Definitely don't want to pinch that. I think I'm pinching the rear fan cable. See, this is going to make it even more difficult to get the motherboard back out when I do find the standoff, because not only will the water block be attached with the hoses to the radiator, but the rear fan, getting the board out without pinching the cable, is already hard to put the board in without pinching that rear fan cable. So how much more difficult is that going to be if I put this together and then have to take it apart to add the standoff? I don't have to add the standoff. It's not technically necessary, but I have a bare hole right there, right where you can see it, and I have a solution for it. It just bugs me that because we're live, I can't really stop everything until I find it. Yeah, we are definitely hitting this fan cable. And that fan cable is tight. Talking about the rear case fan is in our way. Which again, CoolerMaster should have thought of that when they designed this. To give us enough slack, you know the I/O shield's going there. Okay, so what I want to do, just to check things out, is I'm going to take one of these screws and place it right in the center hole of the board, so I can lift this up, look at the other side, and see if we can still attach everything we need behind the CPU, if CoolerMaster has afforded us that opportunity, or if we have to attach the water block before we put the motherboard in. At this point now, I've lost confidence that CoolerMaster has thought of us over one silly little thing, but that's how it all starts, and then it spirals out of control after that. So we'll just put that one screw in there. That'll hold the board in place, secure it for us. We can lift this up. Got a lot heavier. Okay, good. Okay. So the cables I'm talking about are on this rear fan, and they're up here, and they were, well, now they're loose. You can get that wire tie off of there. That doesn't belong. I would have taken it off before if I would have noticed it. And yes, the back of the motherboard tray is wide open for us to attach the components we need to sandwich on the water block. But I think that's going to look really good in there. I know it may be a little difficult to picture that, but we'll have the block. Typically the hoses go towards the RAM. So the block will go on there like that with the Corsair logo, I'm sorry, the CoolerMaster logo upright. And just to kind of finish this visualization, grab the glass panel and pop it on. I'll tell you the weight difference between the metal panel on the backside and the glass panel on the right. The glass panel is like 10 times heavier. So if we put that on, again, just want to visualize what's happening here. What is our build going to look like? I'm bothered that screw isn't captive. They dropped the ball there. What do I do with it? There it is. Well, I guess once it clicks in, I don't need to put this back in. But just to make sure it doesn't fall and break. I do think the motherboard color pairs well with the case. And remember, where it's the silver part, we're going to put the water block there for the cooler. The back of it, the I/O shield, matches beautifully. The nice gunmetal color with the black. Gunmetal and gray, I somehow got to some weird word. This gunmetal color with the black is a really nice color combination. I do like that. You can see by not having these wires tied up, they're catching on everything as I rotate this around. But I think we need to stop here because we're almost at 3 hours in today's broadcast, and there's at least another 2 hours yet to go. That'll also buy me some time to figure out where my nylon standoffs went to. And that way I don't get too far in this and then have to turn around and take it back apart. When I build systems, my goal isn't to build it and cut corners. It seems really silly to me that something so simple, inexpensive, and common would be left out. But it also seems silly to me that I don't know where mine are. But I shouldn't have needed any at this price point. I can't emphasize that enough. And if ASRock just wouldn't have put the damn hole there to begin with, like most other ATX motherboards in the industry, we also would not have had this problem. So I had to pick just the right motherboard and just the right case at just the right time when I didn't know where this stuff was, for all of that to happen at once on a live video. However, getting familiar with this case, I think, is the important part of the video. Identifying what makes this different from others and why is it so expensive starts to make sense, right? To know what you're paying for. And then when it becomes an issue with the motherboard, I think that's an important consideration too, that if it's important to you, as it is to Dell and HP, that they're not leaving any screws out, that you want to make sure you use all the screws, that you have an extra standoff on hand, or that you can go on Amazon and buy the nylon standoffs if you're like me and you want to make sure that there's no empty holes that look like whoever built this didn't know what they were doing. A different motherboard or a different case would resolve this issue. On the other hand, the board fits in well and it looks good in there. So something little can really spiral out and it can be the sign of other frustrations to come. I hope it's not. Like I said, working on the Ncore 100 was a pleasure. But it's a mini ITX board, and those only have 4 screws universally. They don't make them any other way. ATX boards, they make them with 8 screws, 9 screws, or 10 screws. And I don't know why CoolerMaster only gave us 9, but I'm going to let them know I'm not happy about it. John Paul Bacon said, from what I understand, it's okay to have a hole that isn't supported. That's why it's not necessary. That's why ASRock didn't need to add that hole. That's my point. But now to leave a gaping hole through a windowed side panel that you can clearly see suggests to me whoever built it took a shortcut. If the hole isn't necessary, why is it there? ASRock thinks it's necessary. I disagree, but now they've given me a hole. If you have a hole in your backyard that you could trip and fall in, wouldn't you want to fill it in or do something? Or would you just leave a gaping hole that people could injure themselves by not paying attention and falling into? It's that kind of mentality. It's like, this isn't right. I'm not saying it's dangerous, but it's definitely not right, and it's not professional. David Graham says, OCD sucks. I'm glad I don't suffer from it. I want you to think about if you buy an HP or a Dell computer and you open it up, do you see any screws missing? Do they ever say, we don't need those, we won't use them? Because they're selling thousands of computers every single day, tens of millions of computers every month, tens of millions. And if you could shave off the cost of one screw, can you imagine how much savings that would add up to for Dell and HP? And yet they don't do it because they're professional. If you're at home and you're the kind of person that says close enough, you're not working for me. The reason people hire professionals is they expect professional work done. If they wanted a hack job where somebody said close enough, why are they hiring a professional for that? They could just go on Craigslist and do it themselves. So I hold myself to a higher standard. And yeah, you can say it's OCD, sure. But it can also be considered just doing it right. If I put something back, and I always put it back in the same place, is that OCD, or is that putting something back where it belongs? So it's not necessarily a bad thing. The difference between doing a good job and doing a great job is 15 minutes of your time. And it'll take me 15 minutes to find a standoff, whether it's a nylon standoff or a screwed standoff. It's somewhere in here. The fact I have to look for it pisses me off. Anything less, I don't want to put my name on it. It's not good enough. I'm not building this to your standards. I'm building it to mine. And I want my customers to know I put that attention to detail in everything I do. And if that doesn't matter to them, they can save money and go somewhere else and let somebody else build it. I don't mind. David Graham says, a new product line, motherboard hole caps. You know what? If there was a little cap I could push in there that would snap in, I'd be happy with that. Just get rid of the hole. The hole has like a silver ground around it, so it really shines out. It's the same, like the PCIe slot is silver. When you put a slot in it, you're not going to put a card in that slot. You're not going to see that. But for me, when everything is blacked out, one little silver piece, like if you've got a black car with black tires and black rims and black valve cover caps, and somebody puts a chrome valve cover cap on one of the 4 wheels, it doesn't look right. It stands out. It's like having a piece of broccoli in your teeth when you're talking. Big, bright, that's all people see. The rest of your teeth are bright white, shiny and straight and beautiful, and all they can see is that piece of broccoli because it doesn't belong, and it draws your attention. And so for me, this draws my attention in the same way that a chrome valve cover cap on a car that's got all black would stand out. It wouldn't be like I didn't notice it. It's shining like a spotlight going, look at me. I'd rather take the valve cover cap off and throw it away and just have the valve stem, because it's not shiny and shouting, look at me. That hole, because of the color of the grounding around it, it's solder, it's silver, it shouts, look at me. And I don't want people looking at that. I want them looking at all of this, right? Little flaws that you have to look for are different than flaws that shout out, look at me. All right. There we go. So ultimately, at the end of the day, I am really excited about this design and the way that everything's included. I'm going to send CoolerMaster an email, and I want them to know I've made a video on this. While we're live, I have an ASRock Z890 motherboard that isn't compatible with your case because you refuse to include, amongst all the extra screws you claim this comes with, you refuse to include a simple extra standoff. I'd like to know why. I also want to send an email to ASRock and say, I was making a live video showcasing your product today, and because unlike most other ATX motherboard manufacturers, you have decided to add this extra mounting hole that is intended for micro ATX, I'd like to know why you put it there. And then I'll share with you the responses I get. In the meantime, the build will continue as soon as I find my nylon standoffs, and that gives me time for a break. You know, I've been doing this since got live here about nearly 3 hours ago, and this shouldn't have happened. And so I'm not in a good mindset right now to continue anyway. So we'll pick this up probably on Sunday. We'll take Saturday off. We'll come back on Sunday. We hope you'll join us. And then hopefully I'll have the standoff set aside. I'll do all the work on camera. I won't touch this off camera. We'll get the block installed. We'll get the wiring hooked up. We'll fire it up. And we'll see how it looks with all the RGB lit up. It should be that easy. So maybe another 2 hours of work. But I hope you guys have a great rest of your Friday. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today and tolerating me digging through bags, because I honestly thought it's in one of two places and it isn't in either of those two. So I'll be less pressured to look for it off camera than doing that live. Wish I would have had a heads up on that. But I do this so you don't get those surprises. If you choose to use a motherboard like this board here, you better check your case, or you don't care if you leave empty holes. Either way, I'm good with it if you are. I'm just taking a quick look here in the chat for any final questions or comments, and we'll wrap it up. John Williams said in the past you always had a hard plastic standoff. Those are the nylon standoffs I'm referring to. Steve Perry said, an old story was a carpenter has a table he's making upside down to work on the underside. The customer enters and says no one will know about the underside. Again, I'm building it to my standard. So I can't express that enough. If you're the kind of person that says it's close enough, you will not work for me. Close enough is not good enough. Close enough is good for amateurs. If you're going to call yourself a professional, you're going to do professional work. If you don't want to do professional work, don't tell me you're a professional, because you're not. That's how important it is to me. Those little details are what separate professionals from amateurs. As far as I'm concerned, that's one way you can tell right out of the gate. And if you're doing this for other people, it's other people's money and other people's equipment, and you can't be bothered, I don't want you working for me. So it's just how I choose to run my business. John Paul Bacon says, why are there standards when the standards aren't followed? Which company is at fault? Well, probably ASRock is going to say that that is an ATX standard. It just isn't often observed. Other companies will say it's a micro ATX standard that doesn't apply to ATX. Wikipedia will probably tell you it does apply to ATX. But most companies won't use that because it adds extra expense in manufacturing. There's always going to be a side to it. The standards committee who decided it, probably technically that is the ATX standard. It is an optional ATX standard. But it is not necessarily optional as a micro ATX standard. And then, you know, look, if CoolerMaster simply added an extra standoff, we wouldn't even need this discussion. Because what CoolerMaster's logic was, if you don't need the extra screws that a full-size ATX board needs, and instead you need the extra screw of micro ATX board, just take one of the other screws and move it. That's why they've given you the tool. You usually get that tool with a much cheaper case. That's not a fancy add-on. But what they didn't consider is, we understand if you need less than 9 standoffs, or 9 or less standoffs, you can move the ones you're not using their tool. But what if you need 10? Their argument may be you don't need 10. Their argument is you do need 10. And my argument is I don't want an empty hole, okay? I don't care if I need it technically. I need it for the aesthetic purpose of a job well done. That's it. It's just that simple. So you're going to ask 3 different people. I promise you're going to get 3 different answers. Scott says, checking the motherboard box. Maybe extra standoffs came with the motherboard. Motherboards cannot determine what case color or style your case you purchased from is going to use. They don't know the length of the standoff, the height of it, or the thread or depth of the thread. There's no way possible that a motherboard would ever contain a standoff. Standoffs are included with cases because they all use different standoffs. So you have to use the right standoff for the case, or it won't thread properly, it'll be too tall or too short, or the screws that go into the standoff itself, that also has to be the same screws that go into all the other standoffs. So there's a thread pattern there as well, and depth, that all has to be matched. And the case manufacturers, depending on how they've designed the case, the space between the bottom of the motherboard and the bottom of the I/O shield, depending on where they put the motherboard tray, determines if your standoffs are this long or this long. And then which screws you use to tighten the motherboard down to secure it to those standoffs have to match the standoffs in their internal thread diameter and depth. It's just that simple. When case manufacturers start using the same parts as other case manufacturers, they sue each other. They say, those are ours. You stole from us, pay us royalties. So in many cases, they have to use their own. And by using their own, they decide their own length, thread pattern, and depth for both the standoff and the screw that goes in it. The part that's standard is the location, not the standoffs themselves. Or at least potentially. If you're building a standard ATX case with standard ATX standoffs, then yes, that's a standard. But the minute you change your case design, you probably trademarked your standoffs. And anybody else who uses them, they're going to get sued. That's the whole point of the trademark, right? Is that it's your patent, it's your design, and if anybody else wants to use it, they're going to pay you a royalty for that. License it. See how complicated this is? Simple stuff, but in business, this stuff actually has to be researched, and it has to be gone through the proper legal process to ensure the company's protected legally from any liabilities from competitors. That's why a motherboard would never contain screws to mounting into a case. It'd be impossible. Well, not impossible, but the odds that they would include the right ones, like 1 in 20. John Paul Bacon says maybe there needs to be a new standard for the standoffs themselves. Have you worked in a committee, John? Trying to get anybody to agree on anything and for the manufacturers to all agree on what standard they're going to use? It's like herding cats. So likely that'll never happen. Companies are in business to make money and put the other companies that are their competitors out of business. That's their job. They don't want to share technology. They don't want to help out their competitors. So while I agree that would be great in idea, the exercise would be nearly impossible. The case manufacturers have very little motivation to work with one another. They all believe their designs are superior, obviously. So why would they adopt a standard from a competitor? They're all going to agree that one's better? That's not happening. Dwayne Blackwelder said, I understand the frustration. I'm in the same way. When I finish like a network installation project and walk away, I can be proud that everything was well done as professionally as possible. Yeah, we're not doing this for fun. We're doing this to earn a living, and we want our customers to have nothing to complain about. We're trying to foresee what could a customer complain about. How do we prevent that from happening? And furthermore, something as simple as a missing screw. Holy cow. These can end up being your most expensive support calls. Because imagine you sold this to somebody. Remember we talked about prices. You're somewhere between $1,500 and $3,500, depending on if you had a GPU, without any profit. So you add another $400 or $500 on that minimal for your labor and support. The customer says, I just paid you $3,000 for this. And there's clearly a screw missing. And let me tell you, a customer who pays $3,000 for something is more likely going to see that missing screw than anybody else. So you need to fix your mistake. And I'm going to say, no, it's not a mistake. That's the way it's designed. Customer is going to say, at $3,000, I don't expect that. So I need you to fix it. If you need to change the board, change the board. That looks like it's not professional. That doesn't look like a $3,000 computer if it's missing screws. What if you bought a car and you paid $50,000 for this car and it had 3 lug nuts on the tire when it's supposed to have 5? Or maybe one lug nut was a different color, just a different color. Would you accept that? What if the interior in the car is all brand new, but there's a small stain on the seat? Would you accept that? Nothing wrong with the car. It's not a safety issue. Just a small stain on an otherwise brand new car that's very expensive. Would you say, that's close enough? Maybe you'd say, take the price down on the car, right? Or maybe you wouldn't accept it at all. Same logic. Someone could say, well, the seat is still as comfortable. There's nothing wrong with the seat. Just because it has a stain, it still functions as a seat, still is comfortable, right? Are you going to accept that and say, okay, I agree with you? Probably not. Steve says the hole could be purely for the board manufacturing process. I doubt it. It's possible. But those are mounting holes. They serve one purpose. As far as I know, they're not a manufacturing. It's not like when you look at like on an American plug, it'll have holes through it. That's part of the manufacturing process. And not all plugs will have those holes. But ASRock makes other motherboards this size that don't have 10 holes. So why would the ASRock board, certain models that are otherwise same dimensions, have 10 holes, while other ASRock boards don't? Wouldn't they follow the same manufacturing process regardless? So that doesn't make sense to me. But it's still possible. You could be right. Phil Stodd said the world can't even agree on a unit of measurement, but everyone agrees a day is 24 hours. Yeah, well, there is that. That's a good point. So there you go. Basically, like I said, at a 3-hour video, I think we've covered enough ground for today, regardless of the reason why we're stopping. We weren't likely going to get all this done in one build video. However, and again, I want to reemphasize, interacting with you is really enjoyable for me, and I really appreciate you guys interacting and being a part of the live chat while we do this. That's why it's frustrating for me to have to walk off camera and try and find something, because not only am I not getting work done here, I'm not talking to you guys. Like, I'm talking to you, but I'm not hearing back from you because I have to read it. And that's frustrating for me. So we will pick it up Sunday. I hope you'll join us then as we continue on, and I'll have a standoff solution in place. Certainly, I'll have a standoff solution in place. I just won't apply anything. I won't change anything. We'll pick up right where we left off. I'm sure you can use a break too. So enjoy the rest of your Friday. Thank you for hanging out with me. I want to thank again the Super Chats and all the members for supporting this channel. And again, a thank you to our friend Buster with a very generous contribution today. And Ben Laird, thank you as well with a £10 Amazon gift card. And hold on, let me go back to my Super Chats. We had a lot of Super Chats today. A lot of generosity in our community. Peter with a €1 Super Chat. Bob Claiborne with $5. Thank you again to Nick Caffrey, a €5 Super Chat. Joshua Mattingly with a $10 Super Chat. NCG with a $5 Canadian Super Chat. Samuel Kowalski, Planet Cryos, Robert Kachna. Thank you guys for supporting the channel. Ron Barnish renewed his membership. Hope he's getting to feeling better soon. Thank you to Alan Lindos and Davis Parsons for their Super Chats. Douglas Burchell, thank you for renewing your membership here as well. Thank you to our friend Charlie Purdy. Buster also contributed a Super Chat, as did Rick Lakes, Ben Laird, and our good friend Mark Gaines. Guys, without you, these videos would not happen. I can't thank you enough. And without you, all of you, this community wouldn't exist. And that's the best part of the channel, is the community. I think you agree. Thank you so much. Thank you to Mara, who's working tirelessly in the background. She does our thumbnails. She adds all the links to the videos. And if you have emails, she's likely the one that's going to respond, and she stays on top of that. If you want to reach out to us, our email address, I'll put that right up here on the screen. Right there is how you can reach us. And we have a forum, a message board, CareyHolzman.boards.net. If you look under the video notes, you'll see that link in there as well. It's all free for you to participate in leaving messages and to talk with other members of the community when we're not live. If you have questions, problems, or just want to chat about things computer related, visit our boards. They're completely free. Membership is not required. If you want to reach out in private matters, the email address there on the screen, showcasecreate@gmail.com. That'll wrap it up for me for today. Oh, wait a minute. The Super Bowl is Sunday, isn't it? I think the Super Bowl usually starts later, though, doesn't it? Hold on. Now I got to know. When is kickoff? 4:30 p.m. Is that my time? 6:30 Eastern, so 4:30 Phoenix time. Oh, we have time to do a show before then, as long as we wrap it up by 4:30. We're not even at 4:30 today. It's only 10 after 4. Yeah, we'll be back on Sunday for sure. All right. Mara's giving me the I hate football face. It's the last.
You figured it out.
It's the last game, and you won't have to hear anything about football until September.
You mention one thing or say one word till September, I will kick you hard. My big shoe.
With your foot?
With both my feet.
Does it involve a ball?
It might.
Both of those too, huh?
Wait a minute. You're going there. Don't go there. Don't go there.
All right. Thanks, you guys, so much. We'll see you all again on Sunday. I hope you'll join us then, 1 o'clock Phoenix time. Until next time, bye for now.